Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Wednesday. It means it's a midweek rundown here today, and a lot of fun topics coming your way. We're talking about Notre Dame's all-opponent team in part one. We're talking offense. Part two, we're talking defense. Part three of today's show, Brian, we get to talk about the top 10 offensive players at Notre Dame from 2000 to 2025. And that was a much more difficult list to put together when you really start to think about all the great players that have come through Notre Dame in the last quarter century. So we're going to have a fun discussion about that. We're going to preview Rice today, Notre Dame's second opponent of the 2026 regular season. And then we're going to wrap everything up with a daily mailbag. Saw somebody ask in the chat if we were going to have one today. Yes, there will be a daily mailbag. MB for mailbag, mailbox emoji lets us know to set your question aside. Preferred questions will be around the topics that we discussed today because we have a Friday free-for-all mailbag coming on Friday. But, Brian, this is going to be a really, really fun show today, man. This was a fun show to prep for, like window behind the curtain, peek behind the curtain when we do things like top 25s and top 10 quarterbacks and conference rankings. It takes a lot of prep time to go into this. And one, it was just cool to take that trip down memory lane for the top 10 offensive players for Notre Dame, just thinking about the seasons that, some guys on our list had. And then it was cool to dive into Notre Dame's schedule and make an all-opponent team. We made a first and a second team. It's going to be a fun show today, man.
It is. I'm looking forward to it. And, there were some parts of this all-opponent team that were difficult to put together because there's a lot of good players. Which ones do you pick? Who do you leave off? There were some that were difficult to put together because I don't know who I want to have even listed at all. There were some positions that aren't great. And so what we're going to do today is a lot of times we snaked back and forth. And what we're going to do today is we're just going to kind of list our first and second teams at certain positions. And then we're just going to talk about it. And we'll talk about just overall what we think of the positions, the players. And then we'll go like quarterback, running backs, receivers, tight ends together. Then we'll do O-line. Then we'll do D-line. Then we'll do linebackers and DBs. It's going to be fun. And what we're going to do is we're going to do offense first part of the show. And just kind of talk about, look, this is the kind of talent that Notre Dame's going to face this year. And, is it strong? Is it not strong? And Trev, I think you have all but 2 Miami starters on your first team offense. So, we'll talk about, look, there's a very clear, and I think we have a good chunk of SMU's starting offense on here too, the 2 of us. So we'll talk about, look, this is where a lot of that power lies. And it just, looks at the schedule that way. So it's going to be a lot of fun, man. And usually when we do these kind of lists, we're usually on the same page. We actually had a lot of differences on this one, which was going to make it more fun, in my opinion, for us to really dive into it as opposed to just kind of regurgitating each other's list. There are some positions that it's look, we got the same guys because there's not a lot of debate there.
Sure.
But I'm looking forward to it. And I'm ready to get rocking and rolling, Trev. We would love to hear from you guys about who you think should be on there. And what you think of the list that we have. Hey, I watched so-and-so. I really like this kid. Let's talk about that kid. We want to hear your thoughts too. And I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm really looking forward to it. And then, of course, the top 10 players list is going to be interesting. We had 9 of the same players. I think our top 4 was the same. But then after that, we definitely had some differences. So I'm looking forward to that. Our Rice preview today will be pretty quick. And then we'll get into the mailbag. So go ahead and leave those questions in there, folks. As I said, I would love it if you guys stick to these comments, share your comments and also questions. It's also that. So very, very much looking forward to today's show, Trev. And of course, kicking things off with our all opponent teams for Notre Dame.
Yeah, this was a difficult list to put together. And as I was going through it, I'll give my first team offense. But as we were going through it, it was tough because I found myself giving a lot of love to Miami, BYU, and SMU. But then when you look at the makeup of the schedule, the talent on their rosters versus the talent on North Carolina's roster and Stanford's roster and Purdue's roster, just one of those things is not like the other. And so that's where we start. But we'll go quarterback first. And the quarterback of my first team all-opponent offense is Darian Mensah from Miami. I don't buy into there was a conversation in the chat a couple of weeks ago about, he's unproven and this and that. And look, one, this is also reflective about Notre Dame's schedule. This isn't how we feel about Darian Mensah nationally and where he should be ranked nationally. But I have Darian Mensah as the first-team quarterback. Big kid, 6'3", 205 pounds, completed 66.8% of his passes. Very productive last season, as was running back L.J. Martin from BYU. when I was going through and ranking the position groups, which is something that I did back in February of the rankings that Notre Dame would face, I actually put Miami's running back room ahead of BYU's when you factor in they have Mark Fletcher and Shamar Brown. But I would take LJ Martin over both of those running backs. Again, big kid, very productive during his in the backfield at BYU. Receivers, especially the first two, there wasn't much thought here for me. Malachi Toney and Cooper Barcotti from Miami, those are the two most productive wide receivers returning on Notre Dame's schedule at the P4 level. There's some other guys that transferred in that put up big numbers, like I think Nico Brown put up big numbers at Yale. He's going to be at Stanford this year. A couple more players.
Some very intriguing transfers.
Yes.
From the FCS and G5 level up to a lot of different teams this year. That's a position, Trev, where there's a lot of transfers making an impact. Well, that they're hoping, teams are hoping can make an impact this year.
Yeah, there are, man. And one thing that was, there were some position groups that was like, look, man, it's not too hard to figure out. But wide receiver there, I spent a lot of time there. I thought I was going to spend a lot of my time in the trenches. I spent a lot of time at wide receiver because, I mean, really, if we're taking 3 wide receivers per team, there's like 36 wide receivers to look at that Notre Dame is going to be facing this year between a starting lineup. And it was interesting. But I took Malachi Toney and Cooper Barcotti on my first team, along with Jordan Shipp from North Carolina. I'm not in love with the roster that they returned. They have 2 skilled guys coming back, Demon June at running back, and then Jordan Shipp at wide receiver. And I'm very interested to see what he does this year with Bobby Petrino stepping in as offensive coordinator. He had 60 receptions, 671 receiving yards, and 6 touchdowns last year. Question around, is Billy Edwards going to be able to perform up to the standard of what Gio Lopez did as a passer? That was something that I factored in as well, but I like Jordan Shipp as a talent. And then tight end, I went Elijah Lofton at Miami. There's 2 trains of thought, and I both think they're extremely valid. I don't know how much attention that he's going to get this season because of the presence of Malachi Toney and Cooper Barcotti and some other receivers in Miami's receiving corps. On the flip side of that coin, he might be left open a lot and kind of get the Will Pauling effect, I would say, to a degree, because there's going to be so much focus on Toney and Barcotti, Vandrivius Jacobs, Mark Fletcher, that Elijah Lofton could be a guy that puts up numbers this year. I like him as a receiving threat tight end, so that's my quarterback through tight end.
Hey, Trev, let me call a little bit of an audible here on how we relay these. Let's do it this way. I think this will make for some fun discussion. Let's just list our first and second teams, and then we'll kind of talk through it together on each position. Does that work? So I'll call a little bit of an audible. So before I go to my first team, then I'm going to bring up your second team and then just let you kind of go through that real quick. And then I'll get to mine and then we'll talk about it. Cause I think there's some interesting things. And I keep stopping myself from like wanting to cut you off during the thing. Cause I think it'll be more fun to chat that way. So let's do it. A little bit of an audible here. Trev's a pro, so he'll be able to quickly adjust. But so let's just go through your second team, and then I'll quickly go through mine, and then we'll have some fun talking about it because there's some really interesting stuff here.
Brian thinks I'm a pro. All right. This is my only takeaway. No. Second team, all opponent offense for Notre Dame. Quarterback is Kevin Jennings from SMU. Running back is Mark Fletcher from Miami. Wide receivers are Jalen Cooper from SMU, Vandrivius Jacobs from Miami, Cam Vaughn from Miami, and tight end Walker Lyons from BYU.
So that I believe you have on your first and second team, you have 1, 2, 3 transfers, correct? Mensah, Barcotti, and Lyons, right?
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. Here's mine. My first team quarterback is Darian Mensah. I'm with Trev on that one. My running back is LJ Martin, same page. Wide receivers, Malachi Toney from Miami, Cooper Barcotti from Miami. Here's where we're a little bit different. I have Yamir Knight from SMU on there at receiver. Tight end, Walker Lyons, who's a transfer, one of 3 transfers on my first team. My second team, very similar here, Trev. Kevin Jennings, Mark Fletcher. So Kevin Jennings, quarterback at SMU. Mark Fletcher, running back at Miami. Jalen Cooper, sophomore receiver at SMU. I have Jordan Shipp on my second team. And then here's a couple surprises for me as I was going through it. I have Reed Swanson from Boston College, who's a transfer from Colgate. And we'll talk about him in a minute. I have him on there. He's a first-year transfer there. And then Kalen Chudzinski from Boston College. I do not have Elijah Lofton on there. So that's my second team. Let's just dive right into this, Trev, at quarterback. First and foremost, we had the same guys. We had Darian Mensah, first team, Kevin Jennings, second team. This was one of the easiest decisions to make, first and second team. Second team was a little bit tougher because I did want to consider Bear Bachmeier, but there was really not an interesting. There was not an overly compelling case for me to put Bear Bachmeier over Kevin Jennings, just from an experience standpoint, production standpoint. So I had a little bit of thought on it, but not a ton. Obviously, Steve Angeli, you've got Colton Joseph. There's a lot of guys we could have maybe gone with, but I think at quarterback, it's a no-brainer. I think Darian Mintz is one of the 6 to 7 best quarterbacks in college football coming back this year. And Kevin Jennings is a guy that both of us have predicted is going to have a really nice bounce back season. And I think he's going to have he went from a little overrated in 2024 to very underrated last year. And I think he's going to fit in nicely as one of the 10 to 15 best quarterbacks in college football this year. This is a position of strength that Notre Dame plays this year. But I think, look, we talked about these two. There's Bear Bachmeier, there's Steve Angeli, there's Colton Joseph. Ryan Brown's a kid that's got some talent. There's some good quarterbacks on the schedule. Braxton Woodson from Navy. But I think the hierarchy of where they all stand is a little bit more clear, which is a little surprising when you consider that this is one of the stronger positions that Notre Dame is going to face this year, in my opinion. It's just the quality of the quarterbacks week after week is going to be pretty solid for the most part.
And the diversity of the quarterbacks that they're going to face. It's not like they face all 12 pocket passers or all 12 mobile guys. They're going to be tested in a different way each week. I'm with you on the quarterback conversation, man. There was a brief moment that I had Kevin Jennings as my first-team quarterback. Rationale is he's played in the playoff. Then I factored in what his experience was. That was a big factor on this list for me. What type of experience do you have? Playoff experience, postseason experience. You'll start to see that live a little bit more when we get to the trenches discussion. But after diving into who I think was the better overall player, I needed Kevin Jennings to cut down on turnovers. I mean, in Darian Mentz's career, 2 years as a starter, one at Tulane and one at Duke last year, he had one less interception than what Kevin Jennings had just last year.
He does not turn the ball over a lot. He does not. Yeah. He does not. He's good there. Running back, Trev, this also is a no-brainer. There are 2 running backs that are clearly better than everybody else. There's not a lot of proven really good running backs on the board for Notre Dame that Notre Dame's going to have to face this year. There's some solid players. There's some transfers that I think have a shot to be good players this year. But overall, Trev, it's not a really strong running back class. LJ Martin is without a doubt the best returning running back that Notre Dame's going to face. That's no shot at Mark Fletcher. Mark Fletcher's a very good football player. It's one of those things where it speaks more to just how good. It speaks more to just how good the guys are or how good LJ Martin is that Mark Fletcher's not on there. I think a big thing for me too is, you pull this back up there. Big thing for me as well is when I look at LJ Martin, I think he's going to be more of the focal point for BYU as well than what we're going to see from Mark Fletcher. If I'm Miami, I don't know that I'm riding Mark Fletcher into the ground in the regular season. You've got some other good running backs. You've got Jordan Lyle. You've got Char Brown. You're going to throw the ball more this year. I want to keep Mark Fletcher healthy so I can maybe use him even more as a bit more of a workhorse in the playoffs and against Notre Dame and some of those big games. So whereas BYU needs LJ Martin to be a really good player if they're going to be successful this season. So I think those are you got to be kidding me. Those are the things that are factoring into that for me, Trev, as to why I have LJ as the clear number one at that position.
We see that very much the same, man. I mean, LJ Martin and Mark Fletcher are kind of in a class of their own as far as the running backs Notre Dame is going to face this year. There's some others that I'm keeping my eye on to see how they do. I'll be interested to see what Demon June does. The 2 Wisconsin the 2 guys transferring into Wisconsin, Abu Sama and Brian Jackson. Interested to see if Micah Ford can build on what he did last year. He was kind of the highlight of their offense, but I'm with you completely. I think those guys are in a class of their own there.
And not, as I said, not a great year at running back overall. There's a couple guys like BC has not BC, but Purdue Wisconsin has a kid that transferred in from Iowa State that's a good player. Purdue has a couple transfers, but there's a big drop off in my opinion after these 2 guys. Wide receiver, no brainers. Malachi Toney's I think a preseason first-team All-American for me. I just think he's one of the 3 or 4 best receivers coming back college football. Cooper's a kid that was a 1,000-yard player in the at the Power Four. I mean, at the ACC last year. By the way, Alex Teska is not back. That's why he's not on our list. The Navy backs are gone. But Cooper is a 1,000-yard receiver last year, transferred from Penn or Harvard. I forget. Transferred from an Ivy League school. Then maybe Harvard. And had a great year. He's transferring to Miami, but he's coming with Darian Mensah, so they're going to have an immediate connection. The guy that I really liked, Trev, I was a little back and forth on, do I want to go with a more established player or do I want to have a projection? I was going with an SMU player on my first team. The only question was which one was I going to go with, and do I go with Jalen Cooper, who I think is going to really have a breakout season? I'm very high on Jalen Cooper. Or do I go with the more established player, Yamir Knight? And I ended up going with Yamir Knight. I think he's a really electric player, Trev. Good punt returner, averaged almost 10 yards last year per punt return. Had 54 catches for 637 yards last year. It was his first year at the Power 4 level as well. He came from James Madison. And if you look at him, he was really good down the stretch. He was much better at the end of the year. So he ends up with 54 catches, 637 yards, 5 touchdowns. He had 3 catches for -1 yards in the first 2 games of the year. It took him a while. He went 7 for 162 in a touchdown against BC. He had 4 catches for 47 yards and a touchdown in the win over Miami. And then he had 7 catches for 104 yards in the bowl game against Arizona. Like him. But if you look at my second team, Jalen Cooper was right there as well. And I thought about him. Jordan Shipp's an interesting one, Trev. I'd love to hear your case for him as first team. I think the concern for me is also something you stated. I don't know if they got a quarterback to get him to football the way that SMU and Miami are going to have quarterbacks get them to football. And it's very much like it was I think the offense is going to look different this year, but he was more of a possession guy to me. Had a real nice season last year, though. Over 60 catches, over 600 yards. Had a real nice season last year. But I just think the big playability that Cooper and Yamir Knight bring to the table was the big thing for me.
Yeah, I had a very hard time with SMU's receiving core when I was making my list. And one of the reasons why I ended up going with Jordan Shipp over those guys is because I know when I look at North Carolina's offense, he is going to be their number 1 receiver. I don't know who else is going to step up alongside him. I'm with you. I have a lot of questions around how their quarterback play is going to be, which was a little bit of a ding. And I don't have those questions with SMU. But my scenario with SMU is I just don't know who it's going to be between Yamir Knight, Jalen Cooper, or Yannick Smith, the kid that transferred in from East Carolina. He was also a very productive player as well. And so I didn't put any SMU receiver on my first team. Would not surprise me if one ended up being on my first team if we did this again at the end of the season. Would not surprise me in the slightest. And then where I landed on Jalen Cooper is I think he has the highest upside of the 3. I'm really high on Jalen Cooper.
It just was hard to put him all the way up on the first team when he only had 17, 18 catches last year. That's what it was for me. If Vandrevius Jacobs and Cam Vaughn were starting for somebody, I'd have him on there. I actually really thought about putting Jacobs especially on there. But as I kind of dug through rosters, I really settled in on the Reed Swanson kid, Trev. Very intriguing prospect. 6'6", 210. Had a really impactful year last year at Colgate. Had 57 catches, 958 yards. Had 7 catches for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns against Syracuse. Really good ball skills. Smooth athlete, not a burner. But I think in that offense, he's going to basically take the role that Reed Harris had, that boundary, big play, downfield kind of guy. I think he's going to put up some big numbers. And Kalen Chudzinski from Boston College, I think, I could be wrong on that. I think that is, I think his dad is Rod Chudzinski, but I could be wrong on that. I'm actually going to look that up. I thought I had read that somewhere. And obviously he was a tight end at Miami, but let me, yes. His dad is Rob Chudzinski, who played tight end at Miami. He was an offense coordinator in the NFL. He had a really good year last year as a true freshman, Trev. He had 24 catches for 313 yards and 4 touchdowns as a true freshman, which was best among all true freshmen. Tight end is a position, Trev, overall. And then obviously first team I had Walker Lyons. Tight end overall is one where I had a really tough time. That's another position where at receiver, after the guys that we talked about, big drop off, in my opinion. And even some of the guys, I mean, the fact that you put 2 backups from Miami, well, 1 backup and the number 3 receiver from Miami on your second team, I think is a bit of an indictment of what comes back at receiver that Notre Dame faces this year. It's not a lot of great receivers. Tight end's an opposite story. You got Walker Lyons, who you have second team, I have first team. Elijah Lofton, I have no problem with you having him on first team. He might be the most talented kid. I think it's Walker Lyons. My issue with Lofton is the opposite of yours. It's the same thought process, but different conclusion. Because of all the other receivers, people leave him open, so he produces more. That was your take. Mine is because there's so many other weapons. It's like it's hard for me to see. Here's my point. It's hard for me to see Miami having 4 receivers on the first and second team, and their tight end's going to be on the first team, and their running back's going to be on the second team. You know what I mean? Like, I just think somebody's going to lose touches, and that's why I had a harder time with Elijah Lofton there. And I think whereas I think Walker Lyons could be the number 1 target at BYU this year. And same thing with Kalen Chudzinski. I think he's going to be a top target. But the 2 kids that SMU got out of the portal, both really good players. Wisconsin got a couple solid players out of the portal. A guy that I got my eye on, Trev, is Jelani Thurman.
Yep.
At North Carolina, who transferred from Ohio State. He just hasn't produced yet, but he's very talented. This is a position that there's a lot of good depth on the schedule for Notre Dame and who they play this year. Tight end was if you would have taken either one of the SMU kids, Randy Pittman, who transferred from Florida State, was also at UCF. I'm not going to try to pronounce the other kid's name, the Swedish kid, I think is. I'm not going to try to pronounce his name. Theo. Let's call him Theo. There's a lot of good tight ends on the Notre Dame schedule this year. A lot of good tight ends.
Yeah, there are, man. Tight end was a very interesting conversation to dive into when I was putting this list together. I thought long and hard about the Chudzinski kid. I did, because he's a very talented player, and I would love him if he was literally on any other team that Notre Dame faces this year. My concern with him is I have very little faith in Boston College as a team this year, and maybe that's the wrong way to look at it, but they're a team that has an over-under win total of 3.5 wins on FanDuel. Their quarterback play is going to take a step back. I know they rotated between guys last year, but they're going to be relying on somebody from D2. And the caveat to that is, I talked about North Carolina and Billy Edwards, but it's like I have more faith in Billy Edwards than a kid coming up from D2 under Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien is just not panned out at the collegiate level, in my opinion. So, it's just I thought long and hard about him. If Chudzinski was on Wisconsin, if he was on Purdue with Ryan Brown throwing to him, if he was on, he would have been on one of my 2 teams. It was tough to leave him off.
The only reason I couldn't leave him off is that's a position where Bill O'Brien loves throwing to the tight ends. Chudzinski led the nation in true freshman in catches last year. He was their number 2 pass catcher tight end. Jeremiah Franklin had 49 catches for 506 yards. Their tight ends between the 2 of them had 73 catches for over 800 yards. He now steps in and becomes the number 1 guy. And I look, their team may stink, and I think it will stink, but they love to throw the tight end. Their 2 tight ends in the year before, Trev, had 55 catches for 636 yards and 9 touchdowns. That's really what it comes down to for me. No matter how bad they are, the tight end is going to eat in the Bill O'Brien offense. That's kind of where it was for me. But some very dynamic top-of-the-line skill talent on the schedule this year. But I do think that there's a big gap between the top group of guys and the rest on the schedule out at running back and at wide receiver. Quarterback and tight end, really good depth on the schedule this year, in my opinion, Trev.
Yeah, agreed. There are some positions on offense that Notre Dame will face that are very, very deep, and some are very, very thin, and there's very few that are kind of in between. I mean, it's either you're talking about an absolutely loaded slate or a massive drop-off after the top couple, and that's what made this so interesting. to put together of like, okay, well, it could be this guy. Like for receivers there, I got to a point where like I had like 20 tabs open going across all these receivers. And I'm just like, I mean,
nope.
I got to the point where I was like, pick one, I guess.
No.
I mean, it was very,
and it wasn't like, man, I don't know which one of these really good players to pick, which is a little bit of the problem at tight end. That's the problem we had at tight end, Trev. It was like, well, there's like 6 or 7 really good potential tight ends on the roster. Which one do I want to project that's going to have the best year? Because a lot of this isn't just, well, what did guys do last year? We're projecting what they're going to do this year as well. And that made it tough. Let's go to the offensive line, Trev, and we'll just have you list your 2 teams, and then let's talk about it. And I'll list mine, then we'll talk about it.
Yes, I believe this is my second team offensive line.
Yes, I have them backwards. That's your first team.
No worries. First team offensive line, I have Andrew Gentry.
On your toes, man. That's what I said. You're a pro. I had to keep you on your toes. Make sure you knew your own list.
Brian, I try to impress you, man, and I'm hoping that we're.
I brought my A game. Somebody whoever did the cards, Brian, got my teams backwards.
Brian, you got to talk to this card guy. But no, we didn't
talk to myself enough.
To give a little bit of a window in, we didn't go like left tackle, right guard, right guard. We went 2 tackles, 2 guards, and a center. So my 2 offensive tackles, I have Andrew Gentry at BYU, Matthew McCoy, who actually kicked out to right tackle in the spring for Miami, then Addison Nichols from SMU at guard, Kyle. Kyle from BYU.
Yep.
And Joshua Bates at center from SMU. That is my first team offensive line for Notre Dame's all-opponent team. And then second team, I have Jackson Cantwell from Miami and Travion Mack from Syracuse at my tackles. I have Micah Benuelos at Purdue. He transferred in from USC. Samson Okunlola from Miami. Both of those guys are my guards. And then Bruce Mitchell, the center from BYU.
What's interesting, Trevor, is 2 guys on your second team might be the most 2 talented players. And I don't have one of them on there. I just couldn't put a true freshman on there. But you can make a case just physical talent that Okunlola and Cantwell are the 2 most physically gifted players on the list. My first team is Andrew Gentry, and actually, here we go. Okay, here's mine. My first team is Andrew Gentry from BYU, PJ Williams from SMU, Addison Nichols from SMU, Nick Sharp at Michigan State. He's a transfer from South Carolina, also played at Wake Forest, for Nick Tabaka, who's the new O-line coach of Michigan State, and then Bruce Mitchell at BYU. So very heavy SMU, BYU flavor on my first team. Second team, a little bit more Miami here. I have Matthew McCoy at tackle, Nikki Prongos from Stanford, Sonny Makassini from BYU. I just went with the kid whose name is easier to pronounce. That was really because they got the 2 good guards. Samson Okunlola. And I had a tough time. So there's a lot of really good centers on the list, which we'll talk about here. I went with Cam Nichols from Navy. I think that was kind of my pick, Trev. Let's talk about these lists a little bit, because here's the ones we had the same. Andrew Gentry, I think we both had, right? So Andrew Gentry both had, Addison Nichols we both had. So those, to me, Addison Nichols, in my opinion, is the best offensive lineman on Notre Dame's schedule.
Agreed.
He's outstanding at guard for SMU. And a big reason why I think that SMU team is going to be so good. Andrew Gentry, I don't know that I think he's the best tackle, but obviously we both had him on the first team. Tackle's a bit more of there's some really good guards on the schedule this year, Trev. I went with Nick Sharp from Michigan State. Both had Okunlola. I took Makassini from BYU. You took Kyle S. from BYU. There's some really good guards. But let's talk about the tackles real quick. Obviously, we went with Andrew Gentry. Matthew McCoy we had on first. Both had on there. Let's talk about your offensive tackles, Trev, and what led you to pick, obviously, Gentry, McCoy, and then Cantwell and Travion Mack.
One of the biggest things that I factor in with the offensive line, and I've done this throughout my time here at IB, is I value experience very heavily in the trenches. I'm a big fan of experience up front. That was one of the reasons that led me with Matthew McCoy. I mean, he's getting kicked out to guard, which gave me some hesitation.
All over. I think he's also played left guard. And didn't he play a little bit of left tackle at one point in time a couple years ago?
Either 24, I believe.
Yeah, I thought so. Like 2 years ago, I think he played some left tackle. That's a kid that's played all over. So I don't think my point is you talk about him kicking out to right tackle. I don't think him moving to right tackle is going to be some giant adjustment for for Matthew McCoy.
Yeah.
He's played a lot of football at a lot of different spots in his career.
Yeah, he's gotten a little bit of like that Sullivan Absher treatment at Notre Dame. He's been played all over. And like I said, I value experience. We're talking about a guy in Matthew McCoy that had 16 starts in 2025, played 605 snaps. He allowed 3 sacks at right guard. The tough part about like sacks allowed on the interior, and I'm using PFF to track these. Some of those, like, and we've seen it at Notre Dame. Some guys get credited for allowing a sack that it wasn't necessarily their responsibility. That's just kind of their raw numbers stats. Going back and watching him, he was one of their, I mean, he was a part of, I think he's the only returning starter from that 2025 offensive line, I believe. Ryan Rodriguez, I don't think. Yeah. Full time.
It's like Oklahoma played, Rodriguez played, but yeah, as far as the full-time players, he's the only returner.
I'm a big fan of what he brings back. I think he's going to anchor the offensive line this year, having that experience under his belt. Big old kid, 6'6", 325. After watching him on film, he's not going to have any issues out at tackle, which is why I ultimately, put him on my first team. And then we share the same thoughts about Andrew Gentry.
Yeah. For me, PJ Williams, I like him a ton, the kid from SMU. I think he's a really good football player. I think he's going to even be better this year. We could have actually, what's interesting is both of our first team tackles, I thought this was interesting. I believe are right tackles. I believe PJ Williams is going to be playing right tackle for SMU this year, but I could be getting that completely wrong. But I was under the impression that he was going to be playing right tackle, which is interesting. And for those teams is going to help them against Notre Dame because Notre Dame's best pass rusher is their left end, who will be going against those right tackles. So I think that should help them a little bit this season. But I really like PJ Williams as a player. You know, I thought he gave up 16 pressures last year in 13 games. That's a good number for a young tackle. He's got a lot of experience. He's now started for 2 years for them. This will be his 3rd year as a starter. Long kid, really nice feet. Only gave up 2 sacks last year. He's only given up 4 sacks in his career, Trev. He gave up 1 in 23, 1 in 24, and 2 last year. And then he's only given up 5 hits on the quarterback, and he's played over 2,000 snaps total, and he's played over 1,000 pass blocking snaps, and he's only given up 9 hits plus sacks on the quarterback. He's a real steady player. I'm a big fan of PJ Williams. Looking at my Andrew Gentry, just steady. Andrew Gentry makes a lot of sense as a first teamer now, but that's one, Trevor, what's your thoughts on this? That's one where I won't be shocked if when we get to the postseason, if maybe he's more on the second team because some other young guys kind of emerge, but he's a steady guy that it made sense to have him on there. Nicky Prongos from Stanford, I think is a really good, a really talented player that's going to just keep getting better. I really like him at tackle. I think he's going to have a big year. I think he's going to benefit from the stability. They've got a lot of returners coming back on the offensive line this year. They're going to run a pro-style system that are like their right tackle. Khalil House has a lot of talent too, but he's just still super raw. He's given up over 30 pressures each the last 2 years. But like just talent-wise, I thought about him for a second. But very, very interesting one. But I think the fact that we don't have the same guys, like you don't have PJ Williams, I think does show there are some good tackles on the schedule for Notre Dame this year. Like I don't know that there's a lot of elite ones, at least not right now. I think eventually Jackson Cantwell will be elite. He's an elite talent, but is he going to be elite for a true freshman? You know, like that's the question mark. But I think this is a position that I view like tackle and guard and center, offensive line in general. I don't know that there's a lot of great offensive lines on the schedule so far, but there's a lot of really good linemen. And I think the other part is the 3 best teams that Notre Dame plays, they have a lot of guys on this list. And I don't think that's a coincidence. It's as to why we think those teams are going to be as good as they are, especially SMU and BYU.
Yeah, agreed. It's definitely not going to be a coincidence. Those are the 3 teams that I think will test Notre Dame the most in the trenches. To your point, there's some other individual players across schools that I think could have a decent season. Like I paid attention a little bit to Luke Miller. He's the right tackle at Rice. He had a good year last year, but I have questions about, he's a big kid, but I have some questions about his overall athleticism. And then when I think about the matchup between him and Boubacar, or him and Bryce Young, or him and Keon Keeley. There's a clear disadvantage pointing in the direction of Rice. Whereas when I look at guys like Andrew Gentry, PJ Williams, I was very close. He was like my fifth guy in the four tackles that all the tackles that we looked at. I'm a big fan of his as well. But I'm with you, man. There is going to be some really, really good offensive lines that Notre Dame is going to face at the top, and then some individual players along the way that I'll be keeping my eye on. I'm with you completely.
Center strong. We had the same two guys. We had one of the same two guys. Bruce Mitchell I had on my first team. You had him on your second team. Josh Bates I like a ton as well. My only issue with him, I thought he gave up a little bit too much pressure last year for a center. I really like Cam Nichols, but there's some other centers on the schedule that I really like this year too, Trev. And here's a name to know. Obviously, Ryan Rodriguez is going to step into the starting lineup, but Hank Fraley's son transferred to Michigan State from North Dakota State. He was a first-team All-American last year. I think he won the FCS version of the Remington Trophy. He's a kid to keep an eye on too. That was two of three really good transfers that Michigan State got on the offensive line. And that's one of the reasons people want to know why I'm a little bit higher on Michigan State than others. I like the potential of their offensive line. Now, I want to see how Trent Fraley holds up. He's a little undersized. He's like 6'1", 300 pounds, coming up from the FCS level. But he was really good at North Dakota State last year, Trev. And obviously he's got the DNA. His dad was a heck of a college and NFL football player. And he's, I think, also an offensive line coach in the NFL. So he knows how to play. But he's another guy that I thought about as well, Trev. Absolutely. So I like the offensive line that Michigan State's putting together. Nick Sharp was a little banged up last year at South Carolina, but he played for Nick Tabaka at Wake Forest, and I think that trade is just going to be. He is probably the biggest offensive lineman weight-wise are going to play all year. He's like 340, 350 pounds. That's a big boy.
He's a big dude.
But I like the makings of what Michigan State's doing on the offensive line with the portal. The Trent Fraley is I really thought long and hard about having him on my first or second team, but I just had a hard time taking an FCS kid on the offensive line. It's a little easier for me to project like Reed Swanson at wide receiver because, he's played against FBS teams. He tore up Syracuse last year. He's 6'6", he's 210, blah, blah, blah. Offensive line's a little bit of a tougher jump. And we've seen some kids go from that level and really struggle to make that jump. But I really like what Michigan State's doing on the offensive line, Trev. But the BYU guards were interesting too because I was back and forth on which one to pick. And you went with Kyle, I went with Sonny. But it goes to show that BYU has a really good offensive line coming back. I think 4 of their 5 starters we have here.
Yeah.
And the fifth one, the transfer, I thought about too, because he's a kid that's got a lot of tools that I think is going to really benefit from being at BYU. But yeah, the BYU line, Trev, 4 of their 5 starters. We both have 2 of them, and then I have one guard, you have the other guard. We both have Bruce Mitchell, we both have Andrew Gentry, but then we each have but one of the guards. It says a lot about their line.
Without a doubt, when we talk about how stout they're going to be in the trenches and how disciplined they are up front, that's not just lip service. That's after sitting down and watching them and getting to see what this line does when they're able to get in and get to work. I'm as high on LJ Martin as anybody. I think he's one of the best running backs coming back in the country. But I wouldn't also have the opinion of him if he was running behind North Carolina's makeshift offensive line with 5 new portal guys.
Right.
And so
Correct.
when you insert a talent like LJ Martin behind that type of offensive line, Notre Dame's going to be tested mightily in the trenches. That battle, I know we're obviously going to wait till the week of October 17th to talk about it more, but the matchup between Notre Dame's rush defense versus BYU's rushing offense, that's going to be awesome to break down and talk about. But BYU's offensive line absolutely deserves to have these people on there. My second team was interesting because I went with a lot of projection in that one, Brian. Jackson Cantwell, Samson Okunlola, Micah Benuelos transferred from USC to Purdue. Travion Mack was one that actually surprised me a little bit because he actually went up against Notre Dame last year and obviously that massive blowout win. And I can tell you they didn't lose 70-7 because Travion Mack didn't do his job.
Right.
I was impressed. He didn't allow, according to PFF, a single pressure against Notre Dame when they matched up. And then Micah Benuelos, I'm going more with he's going to, I think, be Purdue's best offensive lineman. and Ryan Brown's going to need him to be everything that he was again when he was at USC. And then he actually started against Notre Dame when he was at USC and had a pretty decent day. So I don't think he a lot of pressure either. But with a lot of these, I'm going with higher upside people: Jackson Cantwell, Samson Okunlola, Bruce Mitchell. I'm not necessarily a high upside guy, but he's kind of he's my steady guy on my second team all opponent offense. The reason why I put Andrew Gentry on the first team for now is I can't project Jackson Cantwell to be a first team all opponent offensive lineman for Notre Dame without taking a snap at the college level yet, but he has the talent where he could be on.
Don't sleep on Joey Tonona having a really nice bounce back year at left tackle for Purdue as well. I think he's kind of shook some rust off the last couple of years after missing a couple seasons because of the car accident and the injuries that came from that. But I'm hoping for him. Samson Okunlola is a very intriguing player, Trev. We both have him on the second team. As I said earlier, the two most physically gifted linemen they're going to play this year, just physical tools, are Jackson Cantwell, the left tackle for Miami, who's a true freshman, and then Samson Okunlola from Miami. I had him as a 5-star. He was a stud in high school. He just hasn't been able to put it all together yet at Miami. He started to show some of that last year. He played a bunch for them last year, and now he kind of takes over at guard. I think he's left guard. The only concern I have about the two of them is that they're playing together. Like that's asking, Samson Okunlola went from being a rotation player, playing half the snaps, to now you've got to lead a freshman through this. That's going to be an interesting test for him. But if he puts it all together consistently, he's going to be a first-team player. He's got a lot of talent. We just got to see how that room grows together. That's going to be the interesting tidbit there. Overall, Trev, offensively, there's good talent that Notre Dame faces this year, top to bottom. There's a couple teams that have really impressive talent that could give Notre Dame problems. Miami's all-around skill set and talent on the offensive line, potential on the offensive line. By the time we get to November 7th, I don't think that Miami's going to be as concerned about the quote-unquote makeshift new look offensive line. They'll have 9 games under their belt by that point in time. So you're going to get a better version of that line in November than you would have gotten in September. Still glad they're playing them later in the year for the reasons we talked about the other day, but something to keep in mind. And then, of course, the skill talent. Miami's going to be a more dynamic offense this year than they were last year. BYU is going to probably have the best run game that Notre Dame is going to face this year. You got a running quarterback. You've got the best running back on the board. You've got 4 offensive linemen that are projected to be first or second team all opponent teams from there. And then the other team that's got very underrated talent, and you guys are seeing here why Trevor and I are higher on SMU than maybe some other people are. There's some really legit talent there. Even the kid that's not sniffing our all opponent team because he's just not in the same league as Mark Fletcher and LJ Martin, but Raphael Knight, the kid that transferred in from Cal, is a big physical runner that's going to add a little something to that team as well. So there's a reason why those top 3 teams are on there. But there are some individual players for different teams that are good. North Carolina's got some intriguing pass game weapons with Jordan Shipp and some transfers that they got coming in. And then, of course, Jelani Thurman. What can he bring to the table? BC, offensive line's probably going to be a mess. Don't know if they're going to do a quarterback. They got some legitimate, solid pass game weapons. What are they going to do there? It's going to be very interesting to see. But overall, outside the top group, the Notre Dame defense should have a strong year, because outside of some guys here and there, and then the top 3 teams, there's not a lot of, boy, this is going to be a great year of Notre Dame opponents. I don't think that at all. And if we're wrong on that, it's going to be because some transfers ended up being better than maybe we thought.
Brian, let's talk about our all-opponent defensive teams here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Part 1, we dove into the offense. Now it's time to switch gears, talk about the other side of the ball. Like I did last time, I'll kick us off here with this part. We're going first team first, and then we'll talk about our second team after. My first team defensive line, by the way, we are breaking this down by position group. So we'll talk D-line first, then linebackers, and then secondary. My first team defensive line, Damon Wilson at Miami. Makart Abujade from North Carolina, Ahmed Moten from Miami, and Justin Scott from Miami are my 2 interior guys. And then on my second team, I have Marquise Lightfoot from Miami and Marquez White from SMU. He was a transfer player. Keanu Tanuvasa from BYU, and then Malcolm Alcorn Crowder at SMU on my interior.
We have our first team, Trev, is exactly the same. I have Damon Wilson, Makart Abu Jaudi from North Carolina. We talked about him a couple weeks ago as far as like he's really talented, and he put up a lot of numbers last year. Ahmad Moten from Miami, and Justin Scott from Miami. And it honestly, Trev, I had very little conversation about who was on the first team. And I'll just say this. Part of it is these guys are all really good. The other part of it is after these 4, there's a lot of question marks on the D-line. We'll talk more about that. Your second team, Trev, you had Marquise Lightfoot. Did I have you? Did you go through your second team yet?
Yes, sir.
You had the 2 SMU transfers, and then Keanu Tanuvasa. I also had Keanu Tanuvasa on there. I had Tevarua Tafidi from Stanford on there. Bodie Schoonover at BYU. I had a hard time with my 4th defensive end. If I was confident that Marquise Lightfoot was definitely going to start for Miami this year, I would have taken him. Bodie Schoonover is a real tough physical player, more of a run stopper than he is a pass rusher, which fits their defense. A kid that North Carolina has that I like, he played for them last year too. I really like the Isaiah Johnson kid. Big old physical nose tackle type of kid. Really good run stuffer. He's a kid to keep an eye on. But like, honestly, Trev, I had Keanu Tanuvasa in there. I texted Ryan Robertson. I was like, dude, this is my D tackles. Like, am I missing anybody? Because like, there's not a lot of good D tackles on the board. And he was like, no, I don't really. Some kid that Wisconsin got that he liked that might not even start for him. I'll say this, Trev, and we'll kick things off like this. As I study the defensive lines that Notre Dame is going to face this year, if Notre Dame's offensive line, with the talent they have and the teams that they play, is not a Joe Moore Award finalist, there's got to be some changes. There's not this group right here, really good. But 3 of those 4 from one freaking team. So what are you going to do the other 11 games? BYU's got a lot of tough physical kids, but not a lot of great athletes. SMU's relying almost entirely on transfers. There's a couple, DNs. They have a real athletic kind of pass rusher, defensive end that's coming back from last year, but a lot of transfers. North Carolina has actually got one of the better D lines that Notre Dame's going to face this year.
Yeah.
There are not a lot of really strong defensive linemen for Notre Dame this year outside of that group right there. So that's why I sit there and say, listen, man, if they don't dominate on the offensive line this year, there's a big problem. Because if we were doing, and this is maybe what we should do at the end, just briefly mention, but if we're saying, where would Notre Dame players be on these lists? The offensive line would have a much heavier Notre Dame flavor than it does. Yeah. And you're going against this. So outside of Miami, the physicality of BYU, SMU's got some good transfer. There's not a lot here outside of North Carolina from the top 3. The Notre Dame offensive line should feast. And I don't know that they play a good defensive line until North Carolina in week 5. They better flip and dominate this year, or I've never advocated for a coach to be fired, and I won't do so now. But I'll say, boy, if there aren't some changes, we're going to just continue to be a disappointing disappointing conversations. They should dominate this year. Dominate.
Especially with the level of talent that they have on the offensive line.
Right.
Kirby Lambert, Knapp, Will Black. Could not agree more. Brian, I'd be lying if I said that I did not fill out the first team opponent defensive line before any other. I did it before quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And I went and I obviously did my research and made sure to back my point, but I immediately went in and filled out Damon Wilson, Makart Abujade, Ahmad Moten, and Justin Scott. And then after diving into the numbers, it just kind of wasn't close.
Yep.
I mean, there's a reason why we have the exact. I think this is the only position group where we just have the exact same outside of like running back. I mean, quarterback
and running back.
Yeah.
But that's easier. That's one dude and one dude.
Right.
The only guy that I thought about was Isaiah Johnson. Potentially, but I just look at it and I'm like, I can't put him over the two Miami kids. Because I'm like, I tried hard to find somebody else to put on the first team defensive line because it just seems lazy to me to have three Miami kids on there. And two of them didn't even start for them last year. One's started for someone else. He should transfer in, but it was tough to do that when you're talking about remaking that offensive line. And part of it is there's a lot of talent there. Miami's a lot like the Notre Dame defensive line. Yes, they lost this guy, but they were throwing waves at you last year. And so, but the other part is those guys are really talented. Ahmed Moten's going to be a high draft pick next year. If Justin Scott can be more consistent, he'll be a high draft pick. Damon Wilson's going to be a high draft pick. They're talented guys, but the other part is there's just not a lot after them, other than some transfers that teams are hoping will be able to pan out. Like the Marquise White kid, I think he transferred from like
UMass.
Yeah. And then before that, he was at an FCS school, did really well at UMass last year, but it's a big jump to go from UMass to the ACC. And it was a struggle, man, putting those lists together. It really was.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
Especially D-tackle. End is better than tackle.
Yeah.
There's some good ends that they're going against. Not a lot of great ones, but there's some good ends. D-tackle is a major concern for a lot of other teams. Major concern.
Yeah, I really had to dig in deep and do a lot of research about what defensive tackles were going to be on my second team. And I ended up going with Keanu Tanavasa from BYU and then Malcolm Alcorn Crowder from SMU. He was a productive kid last year, big, long, 6'6", 305-pound kid. And yeah, I'm with you. Defensive end on my second team, I had Marquise Lightfoot from Miami. He only started one game last year, but still racked up 30 pressures, 12 hits plus sacks on the quarterback. I'm with you. I didn't know that there's a question that he might not start. I did not know that. But
depends on who you read. You know, there's some that have him kind of rotating with Damon Wilson and Armando Blunt being the starter on the other side.
Gotcha.
I'm curious about that. We'll see. Because he played, like you said, he played a lot last year.
Yeah.
As part of that rotation.
And then with Marquise White, I am always hesitant about guys going from UMass to the P4, like the G6 to the P4. I'm always concerned about that. And then when I dove in, because at first I was like, kid played at UMass. Yeah, he was very productive there. I mean, while he's at UMass, he had 30 pressures, 15 hits plus sacks on the quarterback. But he had two good games against Iowa on the road and Missouri on the road at that level. Now, is he going to be able to do that for 10-plus games for SMU? I don't know the answer to that question, but the potential's there.
But Trev, to for your point on that with Marquise White, that's exactly what the kid from North Carolina did, though. The Abu Jaudi kid, he played 3 years at Delaware. He was way better at North Carolina than he ever was at Delaware. I mean, his best year at Delaware was 23 pressures, 12 hits plus sacks on the quarterback. That 12 hits plus sacks on the quarterback on 23 total pressures is a really good hit rate.
Yeah.
But he goes to North Carolina last year, Trev, and has 42 pressures last year.
Yeah.
19 sacks plus hits on the quarterback. He had 5 sacks plus hits against Virginia, 3 against Syracuse, 5 against Stanford, 2 against NC State. It wasn't that he was just out there like dominating bad teams. He had 5 pressures against Duke when they played Duke. So, I mean, he's a kid that made a similar jump to what Marquise White is doing. Now, Marquise is not as long as that kid is. That's a bit of a concern, but yeah, D tackle Trev was a struggle. Like, I only wrote down these 4. There wasn't even another D tackle I was confident enough to even write down. Just because, again, it's you're the kid that you mentioned from SMU. He was streaky last year. He had some games he was really good, some games he just didn't show up, and that was a bit of a concern for me. But SMU, I think, is a place where he should be able to step up and play well.
Yeah, those 2 guys on my second team, Marquise White and Malcolm Alcorn Crowder. One of my biggest concerns about SMU's just overall ceiling as a team this year is the fact that their starting defensive line is probably going to be all 4 transfer portal guys. If those two guys step up, I'm going to feel a lot better about them competing for the ACC championship. I think like FanDuel has them as the second best odds behind Miami to win the whole thing. And if guys like that are able to step up, I'm going to feel a lot better about their chances.
And they're being led by a former Notre Dame captain, Mo Crumbs, the defensive coordinator for SMU this year. So let's go linebackers, Trev. Let's talk about this was, I'll say this right away. This is the deepest linebacking unit that Notre Dame has faced in a little while. There's a lot of good linebackers on the schedule this year. Let's kick things off.
A lot of good linebackers, a lot of great production. First team for me at linebacker, I have two guys from BYU, Isaiah Glasker and Cade Uluwave. Then I have Jordan Hall at Michigan State. He's a really impressive kid, big kid, but that's my first team. I'll dive more into him later.
Played at IMG.
Sorry, I got excited.
No, you're good, man. Go for it.
And then my second team, I have Mo Torre at Miami, Mark Anthony Parker at Navy, and Matt Rose at Stanford. The trusty guy with the neck roll. So I got Matt Rose on my second team as well.
I'm honestly a little disappointed. Man, I mean, you spend all this time talking about the neck roll and you don't even have him on your first team. And
I know.
I know. We had a lot of difference here. This is the position on defense. We had the same exact first team defensive line, the same exact first team secondary. This we had a lot of difference on, Trev. I had Matt Rose. I think as far as pro prospect, he's not a top 3 pro prospect, but he's just a steady, physical, hard-nosed player. I think he's going to be a really good player for them. Cade Uluwave from BYU played at Cal. Guys, he's got a really fun highlight tape to watch. Again, I don't know what kind of NFL prospects he's going to be just because, like, what's his true open field speed? But dude makes a ton of plays. Had 100 tackles last year at Cal, had 12 tackles for loss. He is a missile when he goes downhill. He had 3 different games with double-digit tackle for loss. They were against Oregon State, San Diego State, and Virginia Tech. Hits like a truck. I mean, he's got an old-school build. 6'1", 6'2", 235, 240-ish kind of body type. And not bad in coverage from an instinct standpoint. Now, he doesn't necessarily – I don't want him matched up in space against some of the tight ends we've talked about, but, like, he can get in coverage. He had a really nice pick against Texas Southern last year. We made a great read of the quarterback. He was a really good player. Brandon Booker is the biggest projection I have on defense, Trev. He's a guy that was good for SMU last year. I think he had a big jump in snaps last year. He's a kid that I think is going to have a really big jump this season. A lot of assisted tackles, 3 tackles for loss, athletic kid. Last year was his first year really in the rotation. I think he has a breakout season. So that one I understand you not having him. That was a big projection for me. I'll just be honest about that. Sorry, I was supposed to just read them. I got excited like you did. My second team is Muhammad Torre, who literally enters his 8th year of college football this year at Miami. Yeah. Isaiah Glasker, and then Coleman Cauley. So let's dive into this, Trev. Obviously, we had one guy, both, Cade Uluwave from BYU. We both had Isaiah Glasker. I had him first team. I had him second team. You had him first team. Glasker's an interesting player, Trevor, because if he plays like he did 2 years ago, he's a first-team player. I was very disappointed in his season last year. Very disappointed. Does he bounce back or not? That's going to determine whether he's on my second team or if he ends like as a second-team player or first-team player or not on at all. I think we're both projecting him to look more like the guy 2 years ago because he's not on first or second team based on last year. You're projecting more of a return than I am, I think a little bit. But that's going to be an interesting one for BYU is how well does he bounce back?
Yeah, I'm very, very much projecting that he returns to his 2024 form, not 2025 form. I mean, he has all-around linebacker potential. He's somebody that's 6'5", 240 pounds. Like, production-wise, he was fine. Like 67 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, a forced fumble, 2 picks. So there were little bits and pieces of him showing that he can be a really good all Big 12 all-around linebacker.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm projecting that he will just be that this season. Is he going to be that? Or is he going to be like what I thought Eric Gentry was going to be for USC last year same kind of specs, big, long, 6'5" guy, but just never really lived up to that production. We'll see. And then Jordan Hall is somebody that I'm very much looking forward to seeing what he does.
I had a tough time leaving him off, Trev. I really did. That's one that I think I'm going to look back and be like, man, how did I not have Jordan Hall in there? Played at IMG. Notre Dame offered him out of high school. Visited Notre Dame. He's a good football player. I really like Coleman Cawley from Navy. I know you had Mark Anthony Parker from Navy. Two very good linebackers. Parker's more of the playmaker. Cawley's more of the steady, every down, get the job done type of guy. I ended up going with him. Jordan Hall is a guy that absolutely I looked at, Trev. Deion Crawford is a transfer from Buffalo that's going to be at Michigan State this year. That Michigan State, there's a couple positions where I'm like, dude, if Michigan State is as good as I think they're going to be there, they're going to be good. Michigan State had some really sneaky good transfers, and Deion Crawford from Michigan State is another one who came in from Buffalo. I strongly considered him as well. Jordan Hall, I strongly considered as well, Trev. This is one where when I finalized my list, I didn't feel great about it just because there's a lot of good linebackers that Notre Dame is going to play this year. A lot of good linebackers. Stanford's got another kid at linebacker that is going to play next to Matt Rose this year that's a good football player. And so the problem with them is they actually have a couple decent edge players and they're good linebacker, but the interior of their defensive line is a problem. And they weren't coordinated very well last year. I think that should change this year a little bit. But this is the position. I had more guys listed as potential choices here than I did any other defensive position, cornerback being number 2. There's a lot of good linebackers on the board this year and a lot of good linebacker units this year, Trev. Like this is a position where there's a lot to like about these positions. There's no doubt. That's going to be interesting because we don't love the opposing defensive lines, but we really like the opponent linebackers. How well do those linebackers play behind some of those defensive lines is going to be very interesting.
And what's even more interesting is the defensive line as a team that we're the most high on. We only have one of their linebackers on our all-opponent team between first and second in Miami. Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how that dynamic plays out. And Mo Torre is a guy where it's like he's on my second team because he's been in college football, it feels like, since I was like 16.
And he's a solid football player. He's a good football player.
Agreed. But I think his ceiling is second team all-opponent team.
He is what he is. Yeah. He is what he is. Yeah. 84 tackles last year, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 6 pass breakups. Just a good, smart. He's not the athlete he was back at Rutgers before 8th, 9th year of college football, 8th year of college football this year, right? I mean, that's not because he's just keeps suing for eligibility. He's had a bunch of injuries in his career. He's not quite the explosive athlete that we saw in the past. But he's smart. He knows where to be. He knows, where to go. And then, how does he do this season? The one thing he has going for him is it's going to be a second year in the defense. So that should help him a little bit as well. But let's go secondary, Trev. Let's talk about the secondary.
For my first team secondary, we'll go safeties, then corners. I have Faletau Satuala from BYU. I mean, he's one of the most productive safeties returning in the country. I mean, as far as total production, very good player for BYU. Bryce Fitzgerald on the back end of Miami's defense. He had 6 interceptions last year.
Evan Johnson from freshman, correct?
I believe so. Yep. And then Evan Johnson and Xavier Lucas are my 2 corners. Evan Johnson for BYU and Xavier Lucas at Miami.
Second team, Trev.
I have KP Price from Boston College, Zachariah Poyser from Miami, Terry and Alexander from BYU, and Marcellus Barnes from SMU. Yeah.
All right, my first team, Trev, we have the same exact first team at safety and at cornerback, correct? So we have Satuala at BYU, Bryce Fitzgerald at Miami, who I literally had daily convinced I didn't know who he was, and he wasn't on our team.
I was seeing that in the chat, and I was like, Brian, we have the same one, brother. I was like,
I had to have some fun with him a little bit. I'm
so good.
You mean Bishop Fitzgerald, the kid from USC? Notre Dame doesn't play USC this year, dude. What are you talking about?
Well, you had me tripped out. I was like, is his name Bishop Fitzgerald? I was like, I could have sworn his name was Bryce.
No. Really good player for Miami last year. Look, they had a very deep secondary last year, and he stepped up as a freshman and played very, very well. Evan Johnson, in my opinion, is one of the best cornerbacks in college football. Miami has 3 cornerbacks that I considered for mine. Well, let me just finish mine. My second team, I have Jaden Mangum at Purdue and Zechariah Poyser for Miami as my corners. And then I have Therian Alexander and Chris Peel at cornerback. Cornerback to me is the second most, maybe most deep. Actually, I'd argue deepest because the high-level talent is better. There's guys we left off of this cornerback board that you could make a strong argument for. O.J. Federic is one. Demetrius Samuel Jr. from Syracuse is one. Brandon Nicholson from Stanford is a kid that I really like, that I think is going to have a big year this year. SMU's got a couple corners that I think could maybe be in this conversation. There's some really good corners on the board this year. And so these are the guys I went with. Syracuse and BYU and Miami are, in my opinion, 3 of the 10 to 12 best cornerback groups in all of college football next year. And Notre Dame gets to play all of them. So there's some really good corners. And I think a lot of people are sleeping on Therian Alexander and Evan Johnson as a dynamic 1-2 punch at cornerback.
Yes.
They see BYU, they think, oh, probably not great. Those guys are outstanding. Xavier Lucas is a bit of a projection for me. I don't know that he was the best Miami cornerback from last year. A lot of people are freaking out about O.J. Frederic. He is in the conversation. I just think Xavier Lucas in year 2 in the system is going to have a bigger jump and be a really outstanding player for them. So that's kind of where I chose him. And I think the other one is O.J. Frederic. I don't have a different opinion than a lot of you guys have on O.J. Frederic. I just think Chris Peel is really good. And that's the reason he's not on my list. But that Miami secondary and that BYU secondary, without a doubt, are the 2 best secondaries in Notre Dame's going to play this year. Those are big-time football players. Big-time football players.
100%. I'm glad you said what you did about BYU, because a lot of the attention goes to Notre Dame, which I understand, and goes to Oregon with, Ife Obadegwu and the other kid coming back. A lot of attention to Alabama, but Therian Alexander and his name is absolutely escaping me right now. Therian Alexander and Evan Johnson are 2 players that I absolutely think need to be in the discussion for top 5 cornerback duos in college football.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you completely. I projected a little bit with KP Price at Boston College. He had a productive year last year, but he wasn't.
We talked about him coming into last year, Trev. He had a big step back last year. He was a thumper in 2024. He was a downhill, productive, like he would knock your head off. That whole defense struggled last year. Yep. So you're projecting a bit of a bounce back there. I don't think you're going to be wrong. It's just I think the safety depth is better this year than it was last year.
Sure.
And I really like the Mangum transfer to Purdue, but I just got to see it from KP Price. And what's funny is the argument you made about not having the BC receivers on there and tight end on there is the exact argument that this is why I didn't push back like, I think you're wrong, Trev. It does. But that's the issue I have at safety, because they were so bad in the front 7 last year. I think KP Price tried to play a lot of hero ball. He was out of position a lot. He just wasn't as effective. I don't know that that's going to be any different this year.
Yeah, fair.
But as a player, I like him. He's a good football player. We talked about how good that safety tandem was supposed to be for BC last year, just never materialized because what was in front of him was so bad.
Yeah, with some of it that fed into my decision to put him on my second team was the departure of Omar Thornton, because I think now this puts KP Price in a position where he has to be the guy. Whether he rises to that occasion or not, we'll see. But I'm banking on seeing more of the 24 version of him than the 25. But I'm with you. We had a lot of the same concerns.
Yeah, cornerback, we had 3 of the same. You had Marcellus Barnes Jr. on there. I had Chris Peel on there. There's a lot of guys we could have gone with there, Trev.
Yes.
A lot of guys that we could have gone with there. Chat's freaking out that we don't have O.J. Frederic. I would just ask you guys, do you think that because you've seen all the players we've talked about and you just think he's better, or are you just familiar with him and not as familiar with some of the other players on the board? I think O.J. Frederic is a very talented cornerback. But if you actually study the film last year, A, he was banged up a lot, and B, he had some really good moments, but he also had some really tough moments. And if you just go watch the Louisville game last year, go watch the Texas A&M game last year, he's got a lot of talent, but right now he's got a lot more to prove to me than Xavier Lucas does and some other people do. But if you wanted to have him on your second team, as long as you knew you were telling me, yes, I'm familiar with Chris Peel, I'm familiar with Marcellus Barnes, I think he's better, that's cool. That's fine. Because I do think there's a lot of guys that are in the debate to be on here. I don't think it's like the four we have on safety and cornerback. I don't think, safety, I think there's maybe 6 guys that maybe are in the conversation. There's 8, 9 guys at cornerback that belong in this conversation. Like there are. And while OJ Frederick is talented, he's got to be a lot more consistent. And somebody said he sounds like Christian Gray. No, his highs have not been as high as Christian Gray's highs so far in his career. Now there's still time. He's young. I think he's a sophomore. So actually, I think was he a freshman last year? I have to go back and look, but he's just going to have to get a little bit more. Okay, let me see some consistency here. Trev, going through these lists, here's some observations. Number one, Miami's going to be loaded once again on defense. And this is where I think a lot of Notre Dame fans are maybe missing a little bit on why we're so high on Miami, because they're doing to Miami what we are frustrated with a lot of people doing to Notre Dame, which is you just focus on what was lost and assume that what's coming down the pike is not going to be as good. And with Miami, look, their ends are not Ahmad Moten and Ruben Bain, but they're still very good, potentially very good. Their D tackles are still talented. Their secondary brings back everybody. I mean, they lost Thomas at safety. They lost Keontae Scott at nickel. Yeah. Those are big losses. But they recruited DBs last year in the portal that ended up not even starting for them that are going to be good football players. And so I just think that there's good talent coming back there, that they've recruited well there. I think Miami is in reload mode more so than they are in rebuild mode anywhere, just like Notre Dame is. And I think that's where I think some people are missing the boat. And I think another thing is when I look at BYU being a double-digit dog to Notre Dame, that's the thing. Is like I they've got athletes in the back end. There's no doubt about it, and they're physical at linebacker. My concern with BYU, however, is they're not as athletic in the front seven as what Miami is, and maybe not even what SMU is from an athlete standpoint. But that is going to be a physical battle because they're big and they're very physical in the front seven. BYU, but that's also why I had a hard time with where to put some of those guys, because the production isn't great, but they're big and physical and they do their jobs well. But that's a bit of a difference for me than some of those other position groups. If North Carolina could get anything in the back end of that defense, they're going to have a sneaky good defense this year.
Agreed.
Because they're pretty solid in the front seven, Trev.
And their defense performed well last year too. I mean, they weren't losing games because they were giving up 40 points a game. Right. I mean, they performed well last year. I'm with you. Overall, for me, after putting together these lists, kind of confirmed a lot of what we talked about. Mm-hmm. There was 2 trains of thought that I had going into this. One, it was BYU, SMU, and Miami were going to by far have the top level talent, and then we'll see who else fits in other places, because there are some teams with good individual talent. Or it was going to be, hey, some of these other teams have a little bit more talent than what I thought. After putting together these lists, it's somewhere in between. The one outcome that I didn't think that was going to happen, and it didn't after putting together these lists, is, does Miami, BYU, and SMU have the type of talent we think that it does? And the answer is still yes. I like the point that you brought up about SMU and BYU. As of right now, I think, especially defensively, I would say that BYU is the better team. SMU is the more athletic team. The question of who is able to close what gap will answer the question of who Notre Dame's second best opponent is going to be.
For SMU, it's all about discipline and consistency. We know what BYU is, and that's just kind of what they are week after week after week. With SMU, 1 week they're out there beating out Miami and outplaying Miami. I mean, their win over Miami was a lot like the Miami win over Notre Dame, where we've said, Trev, that was not a fluky game. That was, look, we could say all we want. Well, if Notre Dame plays Miami in November, okay, fine. That's okay. But on that day, Miami outplayed Notre Dame.
Yep.
that's the same thing with SMU and Miami. It wasn't a fluky win. Miami got outplayed by SMU. But then that same SMU team will then go out, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, go out on the road and get beat by Cal and give up over 7 yards. Just give up 6 yards of play, give up 452 yards of offense. That same team will get ripped up by TCU, it's the consistency piece that's frustrating if you're watching SMU. I mean, how do you hold Miami to 20 points? And how do you hold, some of these other teams down? You give up 6 points to a good Louisville offense and give up only 228 yards. You only give up 128 yards rushing, but then you give up 601 yards to Baylor, 517 yards to TCU. Like, it's that consistency part that is an issue. Whereas when I look at BYU, especially on defense, we kind of know who they are. There was a couple games they weren't great in the middle of the year, but outside of that, their defense is real steady. And I think they're going to be even better this year. But what hurts them is their lack of a pass rush against good teams kills BYU. And that's something that concerns me in this game, or for them this season. So if SMU can be consistent, I do think there's a world in which SMU becomes the second best opponent on the schedule.
Sure.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's just what Rhett Lashley has not done so far. Of all the good things he's done, he's got to show me his teams can be more consistent. Is that not the same criticism we had for Marcus Freeman until 2024, 2025? They've still had their ups and downs. Everyone's going to have those slip-ups. But it's the lack of consistency from week to week. 1 week you're whooping North Carolina and Drake May on the road, and then 2 weeks later you're losing to Stanford. It's stuff like that just wants to make you pull your hair out. And that's where I think Rhett Lashley's got to take that team. But one thing that I don't think people recognize is they've been pretty good on defense since he got there. They've been much better on defense than people gave him credit for. They had a bit of a last year they lost a lot of guys from their 2024 defense, and that kind of is why they dropped off a little bit. But I think their defense is very underrated, and the consistency with which they've been solid. But that now they've got to be from year to year. But now the key is consistency from game to game. That's where BYU's got to get to. But there's a lot of talent at SMU's got to get to. But there's a lot of talent there. But again, the top 3 teams, in my opinion, are there's a very big difference between the top 3 teams and the rest of the teams from a talent standpoint on the schedule. And ironically, I think North Carolina, it's going to be interesting because we're going to do our top 5 offenses and top 5 defenses that Notre Dame faces this year. Very curious to see if North Carolina makes that top 5 defense ranking. Very curious to see, because there's some talented players there.
The discussion at the bottom of the top 5 will be very interesting, because I think of North Carolina, who I think has more top-level names, like top-level athletes, individuals on their defense, versus a defense like Wisconsin's, where it's like they don't have a Makard Abujade, or they don't have an Isaiah Johnson, but what they do have is like 11 just good guys, or 9 or 10 good guys. It's very interesting to see how that discussion goes, man. It'll be good.
Yep. That was fun.
Yes, 100%. Brian, it is now time here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, to talk about the top 10 offensive players at Notre Dame from 2000 to 2025. And we just got done making Notre Dame's all-opponent team. We talked about how that list was difficult to put together at some spots. This list in its entirety was difficult to put together.
Mm-hmm. So for this list, Trev, we have 9 of the same 10. But even with that similarity, though, there's some differences in where we rank them. And it was very hard. And when I have my list of guys who didn't make it, it was very challenging. Very, very challenging. It's going to be interesting to see kind of how this all puts together. But let's go 10-1. Trevor, have you start. Give your 10. I'll give mine. Then I'll go 9. Then you go 9, and we'll just do it like we do it. We'll snake it that way. Sound good?
Sounds great, brother. Sounds great. My number 10 guy is Will Fuller. And I know what you guys were thinking. How is number 10 Will Fuller? That's how we're starting off this list. But
exactly.
here we are, folks.
And he almost didn't make my top 10. That's, yeah.
Same. Now, I actually, you know what? I'll talk about that at the end. But Will Fuller is my number 10 player on this list. Couple different reasons. One, he's the 5th all-time leading receiver at Notre Dame. 144 receptions, 2,500 yards, 30 touchdowns, 17.4 yards per catch. When I start talking about the big impacts that players have and what, who makes this list, it's who at the time when they were on this team did like other opposing teams just not have answers for. And Will Fuller was one of those guys. No matter who you lined him up against throughout the course of, I mean, in 2014, when they played Florida State on the road, a really good Florida State team on the road, they had no answers for Will Fuller. He was catching tunnel screens and eating them up. 2015, they put USC put a Dory Jackson on. So Dory Jackson's one of the fastest guys in college football. And Will Fuller was like, yeah, behind me. Yes. Literally and figuratively. You're top behind
5, me. I'm number 1 or number 2, I think, in that draft
class,
I believe.
Yeah. Right. Like, bronze is still on the podium. That's cool, but gold's pretty dope too. Like, that's kind of what that conversation was. And so Will Fuller's number 10 on this list for me. He was he followed the trend and was really the first elite receiver that Notre Dame had. They had some other great receiver, like TJ Jones was a great receiver in like the early 2010s, 2010s, but he kind of jump-started that era that Samardzija and Mo Stovall and Raymond McKnight had from 05 to 06. Will Fuller picked that up in 14, and he's one of the top 10 best players that Notre Dame has had on offense, in my opinion.
He was, without a doubt, the best receiver that Brian Kelly recruited.
Yeah.
Not the best to play for Brian Kelly, but the best that Brian Kelly recruited. Without a doubt. And that says something because they've recruited some very good players. I forgot, excuse me. I don't say we, throw Trevor under the bus for this one. I forgot to kind of give an explanation for what we define as best. There's a lot that goes into this. Statistics are part of it. Obviously, if you're a great player, you should perform. Your dominance as a football player, your impact on your football team. So if you put up a lot of numbers for a bad team, like how impactful are you really? Postseason honors and recognition, and then overall impact on the program is a big part of this too. That says, yes, maybe Notre Dame had a linebacker that was more talented than Manti Te'o, but did that guy have the same impact on and off the field that Manti Te'o had? Like things along those lines that just as an example for the defense. So keep that in mind as well. We would love to hear your guys' list as well. Because this was a difficult one to put together. Will Fuller is also my number 10, Trev. Didn't do anything as a freshman, 6 catches as a freshman, but back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons after that. And the thing I loved about Will Fuller is, as you mentioned, he was pretty good in big games as well. You think of the game-winning touchdown. He was also clutch, game-winning touchdown catch against Virginia in the final seconds, game-winning touchdown catch against Temple with 2 minutes left in the game. He was a pretty clutch player for Notre Dame, on top of being an impact player and a dynamic player. My number 9, and this is one that Joe Alt is my number 9. Great tackle at Notre Dame. He is my third of 3 offensive linemen on this list, which says a lot. Unanimous All-American in 2023. Was a first-team All-American, I think, by Sporting. One of the 5 major ones also had him as a first-team All-American in 2022. And then, of course, had a really strong freshman season. So great pass blocker his entire career. Developed into a pretty quality run blocker later in his career, and I'll talk more about that with some of the other guys. But it's sometimes it can be hard to put a recent player. Oh, by the way, also, no current players on this ranking. Doesn't really apply today, but will apply more next week when we talk about the defense. Why the certain guy that plays corner for Notre Dame won't be on our list next week because it's only current players. But it's harder when a guy is done 3 years ago because the legend hasn't fully built up the way that it has for guys from 20 years ago. But Joe Alt was a heck of a player, 2-time All-American, great top 10 overall NFL draft pick. The thing that knocks him a little bit compared to some of the others is he didn't necessarily play on any great Notre Dame teams. And he didn't play on really any great Notre Dame lines, which hurts him. But individually, he was a tremendous individual player for Notre Dame. And my third offensive lineman on here and second tackle on this list.
Number 9 for me, Brian, the Shark, Jeff Samardzija. And just sticking on the same lines of just impactful wide receivers. He is somebody that came onto the scene in 2005. There were some people that couldn't even pronounce his name correctly when he caught that touchdown against Pitt on the road to open the season in 2005. And then he became one of the most dynamic receivers in college football. It's hard to have a discussion around Brady Quinn without talking about Jeff Samardzija. It's almost like those two kind of go hand in hand. And to varying degrees. But you talk about his impact on the offense. I echo a lot of the same things that I said about Will Fuller, about Jeff Samardzija. But, obviously statistics play a factor. Third leading receiver all time for Notre Dame in terms of yards, 179 receptions, 27 touchdowns. And at the time that he was at Notre Dame, he was a part of the revival. He was a big factor in Notre Dame coming out of the Bob Davie, Tyrone Willingham days and really helped jumpstart the Weiss era in 05 and 06 for Notre Dame. So number 9 on that list for me. And then number 8 on this list.
Real quick, did we say, Trev, that this is from 2000 to 2025?
Yeah, at the beginning I did.
Okay, because there's just some people that have that. I just want to make sure that we had said that at the beginning. So
number 8, on this list for me. And it's crazy that I have him this low, but I have Golden Tate, the Biletnikoff Award winner from 2009. Now, there's a couple of reasons why he is where he is for me on this list. Standalone, as far as awards, is he the only Biletnikoff Award winner that Notre Dame has had?
Biletnikoff winner in Notre Dame history.
There we go. Absolutely deserves to be on this list for me. But when I look at his 2009 season, he didn't do, much of anything as a true freshman. Started to break out in 2008 as a sophomore, and then obviously had the season he had in 2009. Now, some of the reason he had the season he had in 2009 was because Michael Floyd, who was the go-to target in that offense, ended up getting hurt. Now, that's not a knock on Golden Tate because you have to take advantage of that.
And he was still balling out. They had like 2 games where they both had 100 yards.
Yeah, it's not like he wasn't cooking if it wasn't for him. Second all-time leading receiver in terms of yards at Notre Dame, 26 touchdowns, 29 all-purpose scrimmage touchdowns. And so he was a dynamic playmaker. You think of iconic plays, the diving into the Michigan State band. I remember sitting at home with my dad watching him just absolutely eat Washington alive in 2009. They just wanted nothing to do with Golden Tate, bro. Nothing.
They didn't want to tackle him. They didn't want to do anything. He's catching slants, and there's not anyone else on the screen because they're playing so far off of him. It was ridiculous.
It's nuts. You had guys popping hamstrings in the open field so they didn't have to try to tackle him. I've
never seen a receiver strike more fear in the defense than what Washington looked like against Golden Tate in 2009. I watched that a couple months ago, Trev, because Jimmy went off in that game.
Dude.
And I'm like, dude, why are they not covering Golden? It's just
yeah, they made the decision to double Robbie Paris, and they just let Golden Tate run wild on that.
We're just going to let him catch in front of us, and then we'll just rally to the ball and tackle him. And he was like, nope, you can't tackle him either. It was wild, dude. It was wild.
But he's on this list for me because out between the other guys that we talked about, I have him higher than Samardzija and Fuller because he won the Biletnikoff and had the better individual season in 2009 compared to the other two, which vaults him up. But it was, in my opinion, just 2009. He was a good receiver in 2008, but he didn't come into his own and blossom as the true guy that we remember as Golden Tate until 2009, whereas Samardzija was that guy in 2005 and in 2006. Will Fuller was that guy in 2014 and 2015. So that's what separated it a little bit for me, but it was a very close conversation.
My number 8 is Jeff Samardzija. I had Samardzija here at number 8 as well. He had a brilliant Notre Dame career, Trev. And, look, he actually started to break out a little bit in the bowl game in 2004. He had a really nice game against Oregon State. Didn't play a whole lot his first 2 years, only had 24 catches for 327 yards his first 2 years. But he was so good in 2005 and 2006. And he was a Biletnikoff finalist twice. I believe he's the only Notre Dame receiver to have been in there. Now, little caveat about the Biletnikoff. The reason Rocket Ismail and Tim Brown were not finalists or didn't win it is because the Biletnikoff did not start till 1994. I have a feeling that, there's a chance Tim Brown might have won that sucker in 1987 if it was around, but it didn't start till 1994. But he was a finalist for it twice. You look at his last 2 years in Notre Dame, he was an All-American. In 2000 and I think 05, and I think it was first team in 06. He was also an All-American 05. 77 catches in 2005, 1,249 yards. So I think it was a single season record at the time, 15 touchdowns. Then the next year he follows it up, 78 catches, 1,017 yards, 12 touchdowns. Impact player for 2 years, in my opinion, go-to player for 2 years. And beyond the stats, beyond the playmaking, he was super clutch. You think of the game winner against UCLA. You think of the slant catch stop on a wet field, cut back out against Michigan State, in that game. You just think of some of the big moments. He was really good against USC in 2005. That made a great touchdown catch where he, beat a cornerback for a big play. He was just a really dominant player, just consistently dominant player throughout his career. And he had 2 brilliant years. The difference for me with Samardzija, I'll explain why I don't have Samardzija higher than Golden Tate in a little bit later. But he was a great player at Notre Dame. But the other reason he's on this list over some guys that won't be on this list is because he was also part of that rebirth of Notre Dame, where Notre Dame proved like, hey, we can have big-time offensive players at Notre Dame. We don't just have to have scrappy O-linemen, tight end, defensive players. You can come here, and I love the swagger he played the game with. He also, like, Notre Dame was cool with Jeff Samardzija and Brady Quinn and Mo Stovall. Mo Stovall, you can argue, was every bit as good as Jeff Samardzija that year, but Mo was just good that 1 year. And part of the reason that Mo was good, if you go back and watch film, is teams just tried to solo cover Mo because they were trying to deal with Jeff. That was a big part of it as well, and they still couldn't stop him. He was a heck of a player for me at number 8. Number 7 for me is Zach Martin, the most underrated Notre Dame offensive player of this generation. He does not belong on this list if you look at postseason accolades. He was a first-team All-American in 2013 by like one outlet. That was it. But just for 4 years was a great player at Notre Dame. The most consistent player that I've seen on the offensive line. You could argue that, 2020 Liam Eichenberg and 2015 Ronnie Stanley and 2017 Mike McGlinchey and 2023 Joe Alt was maybe better than Zach Martin's best year. I would debate that with you because Zach Martin also was part of an offensive line that only allowed Tommy Reese to get sacked 8 times. Do you know how good of an offensive line you have to be to limit him to only get sacked 8 times? I mean, Jimmy Clausen was a better athlete than Tommy Reese. Like, I'm just saying, Jack Cohn was a better athlete at quarterback than Tommy Reese. And I love Tommy, but he was just not a very athletic quarterback. Sacked 8 times in 2013. And Zach Martin was a big reason for that. But Zach was brilliant, and he was a really good player in 2010, great player in 2011, great player in 2012, great player in 2013. And it's the steadiness over time where Ronnie was great in 15. He was wildly erratic in 2014. And he was good in 13, but we saw Zach Martin and Ronnie Stanley on the same line together, and it wasn't close. Now, Ronnie was young, redshirt freshman. Zach was a fifth-year senior. But Zach was a brilliant player. For 3 years, he was a brilliant player, and he was really good in his 4th year. There's got to be something to that consistency of excellence as opposed to maybe somebody else had a better individual season than him, which is debatable. But nobody on this list, including my number 1 offensive lineman, had the number of years in which they played at a high level that Zach Martin played at. And that's why he's number 10 on my list. And if anything, you could argue he should be higher. But when you see the rest, my next 6, I think you'll understand why he's at 7. Now, he became the best pro of everyone on this list. This ranking is just about what they did at Notre Dame, just so we're clear. But he was a brilliant, brilliant player at Notre Dame.
I'm still kicking myself for not having him on mine. I'll just rip that Band-Aid off now. And I legit thought that he was. Brian called and we were going over the show, and he was like, yeah, you didn't have Zach Martin. I was like, yes, I did. And he was like, he's not on the list that you sent me.
Yeah.
And I put together the list late for me, and so there it is. I'm sorry, everybody. It's not because I disrespect Zach Martin. He was one of the guys that helped basically make Notre Dame O-line you.
Yep.
Because I find it far-fetched to believe that it was any of the other offensive linemen. With all due respect to guys like Sam Young and Ryan Harris that came before him, Zach Martin and Chris Watt helped basically establish the O-line U and the tradition that they have. Kicking myself that I didn't have them on there, but I figured I'd just put that out there.
And still comes back to Notre Dame to help continue that tradition. Working with linemen on the team and working at the camps and things like that. Yep.
Now, you guys know me. My number 7 player on this list I got to start talking about tight ends at some point, and we'll start that here at number 7. And I have Michael Mayer. When I look at what he did at Notre Dame, when you talk about the impact, he was the pass offense in 2022. It was him. The last pass catcher for Notre Dame to have over 800 yards in a season was Michael Mayer. Like it wasn't any other receiver. It wasn't any current receiver on the roster. It wasn't somebody that left after 23. It was Michael Mayer. He did it in back-to-back years, 840 in 2021, 809 in 22, 16 total touchdowns between those 2 years. Did not wait long to burst onto the scene as a true freshman. When I think of impactful tight ends at Notre Dame, he and a guy that I will be talking about here very shortly will also be on this list. But Michael Mayer is in a different league to me than guys like Cole Kmet and Kyle Rudolph and John Carlson and Anthony Fasano, other great tight ends that have made Notre Dame tight end U. But you start to level up when you start talking about Michael Mayer. That's why he's number 7. Yeah, you're right, Raymond. My bad, dude. And then my number 6 player on this list, sticking with the theme of tight ends, is Tyler Eifert, the John Mackey Award winner. I knew that I wanted to have both of them on my list, and I did think long and hard about who was going to be where. Because if you just talk production and like back-to-back years, you have a strong case to put Michael Mayer above Tyler Eifert.
He's their all-time leading pass catcher, tight end, catches, yards, and touchdowns. I mean, and he only played 3 years. So statistically, you have a case to make there, no question.
But when I start talking about the impact, you talk about the postseason accolades. He won the Mackey Award after his 2011 performance where he had 803 receiving yards, averaged 12.7 yards a catch, 5 touchdowns. But I think of that 2012 season. That offense is not as effective, and I don't think Notre Dame has as high of a likelihood to go undefeated as they did in 2012 if Tyler Eifert was not a focal point of that offense. When I also start talking about players that I would add to other teams and current teams, the first person my mind goes to is Tyler Eifert. He developed his game going into 2012 after winning the Mackey Award. If you guys remember, some of the knock on him going into 2012 was like, yeah, but how is he going to be as a blocker? Because that's when people started talking about him at the next level. And he took a lot of onus into crafting and perfecting his game in 2012. Then you factor in the impact that he had on that season. He was the go-to target for a redshirt freshman, the old reliable. Tyler Eifert was the guy that really started to make me love and appreciate tight ends. He's number 6 for me on this list.
You said Zach Martin was the guy you had the toughest time leaving off. Michael Mayer was the toughest one I had leaving off. And we'll talk about why I had him off there later, but it's not a good argument. But the reality is who do I take off? It's a struggle. And there's a lot of great players on this list. My number 6 also was Tyler Eifert for the reasons you mentioned. Statistically, obviously, Michael Mayer had a heck of a career at Notre Dame. I still think that Tyler Eifert's 2011 season is still the best tight end season that I've seen from Notre Dame in my lifetime. 63 catches, 803 yards, 5 touchdowns while splitting touches with Michael Floyd. 50 catches for 685 yards in 2012. I don't necessarily give him the edge because he won the Mackey Award and Michael Mayer didn't, because unfortunately for Michael Mayer, he played at the same time as Brock Bowers. That's not really something you blame him for. But when I look at the Tyler Eifert, it was just that he could do so much. He was also the focal point of the 2012 pass offense. And that was just simply on a better team. That's really what it comes down to. He was the best pass catcher on a team that went 12-0 as a guy who's the best pass catcher on a team that went 9-4. That's not real fair to Michael Mayer, but that's just the spotlight that he played in. Now, Michael Mayer had played on better teams overall. Tyler Eifert was the leading receiver on a couple 8-5 teams. But his 2011 season was brilliant. He was outstanding in 2012 as well. Was an All-American in 2000. He was a first-team All-American in 2011. Was a first-team All-American in 2012, depending on who you look at. And as I mentioned, won the Mackey Award. And he won the Mackey Award in a year that wasn't, in my opinion, his best year. He didn't win the Mackey Award in 11. He won it in 12. Just 2 great seasons. And just when I watch him play, here's what it came down to for me. Who would I have a harder time matching up against as a defense? And I think it'd just be Tyler Eifert. And that's really what it came down to for me. But I feel it was tough, real tough, not having Michael Mayer on there. Really tough. And with Michael Mayer, I mean, with Tyler Eifert, you can't also act like, well, he had way better quarterbacks than what Michael Mayer had. Michael Mayer had Ian Book, Jack Cohn, and Drew Pine. Yeah, Drew Pine the last year, but I mean, Tyler Eifert had a redshirt freshman, Everett Golson, and Tommy Reese, and some of Dane Christ a little bit. So, like, quarterback play wasn't great then either, but, man, he was a brilliant player in his career. I have Golden Tate number 5. Here's why I have Golden Tate number 5. The debate for me is not Golden Tate, Jeff Samardzija. I think Golden Tate is, for me, clearly ahead. It's Golden Tate or Michael Floyd. And here's why I have Golden Tate number 5. Brilliant player. And so real quick, Trev, I'm going to mess the order up a little bit. I'm going to go my number 4 as well, because I need to talk about them together because they're right back to each other. Okay, so I'm going to go 5 Golden Tate, 4 Michael Floyd. My buddy Tim O'Malley and I have this debate all the time, and he's Golden Tate's better than Michael Floyd. I'm Michael Floyd's better than Golden Tate. Here's what I'll say. Number 1, the best individual season that I've ever seen from a Notre Dame receiver was Golden Tate in 2009. Was without a doubt the most dominant start to finish season I've ever seen from a Notre Dame wide receiver, ever. I mean, program record, 90-plus catches, over 1,400 yards that season. Golden was absolutely brilliant that season. 1,496, 15 touchdowns, 93 catches, had 25 carries for 186 yards and 2 more touchdowns. If you remember, Trev, that year he was also their primary punt returner, had that big punt return late in the game against Pitt to kind of get them back in that game. Just a brilliant all-around player. Won the Bolitnikoff Award, I think he was unanimous All-American in 2009. Just a special talent. His best year was better than Will Fuller's best year, is better than Michael Floyd's best year, is better than Jeff Samardzija's best year. Here's the difference, though, for me with Golden Tate. His second year, while statistically very good, was not the same kind of dominant second-best season that Will Fuller had or that Michael Floyd had, or that Jeff Samardzija had. I think they all had a better second year and than Golden Tate, whose second best year was 58 catches to 1,080 yards and 10 touchdowns. So then why do I have him ahead of Will Fuller and Jeff Samardzija? Because he still was pretty good that year, 58 catches, over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. But his number 1 season was so much better, in my opinion, than anybody else's. That's why I have him ahead of Samardzija and Fuller. Here's why I have him behind Michael Floyd, though. Michael Floyd's second best season was way better than Golden Tate's. Michael Floyd's third best season was way better than Golden Tate's. And, of course, Michael Floyd's fourth best season was better because Golden Tate didn't play 4 years. That's a big part of it. He has so far shattered every Notre Dame receiving record. It's like it's not even close. 271 career catches, 3,686 career yards. His 100 catches in 2011, catching balls from Tommy Reese, was number 1 all time. When he played with Jimmy Clausen, he was also a big play weapon. Michael Floyd's freshman year, he had 48 catches for 719 yards and 7 touchdowns. As a sophomore, he had 44 catches for 795 yards and 9 touchdowns in only 7 games, which is a really outstanding season. And I've talked about this before, Trev. When you look at Michael Floyd, the thing that you got to remember is that when in that 2009 season that we've talked about with Golden Tate, where he had the best individual season of anybody, it was actually Michael Floyd that was their go-to receiver, even more so than Golden Tate those first couple of games. Now, Golden was still going off. Don't get it twisted. Golden was still doing his thing. But Michael Floyd was still their best player. I mean, first game of the year that year against Nevada, Golden Tate had a good game. He had three catches for 59 yards. Michael Floyd had 4 catches for 189 yards and 3 touchdowns. In game 2 against Michigan, Golden had 9 catches for 115 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Michael Floyd had 7 catches for 131 yards and a touchdown, and just was toying with Michigan. And then when you watch Michigan in that game, they were doing more to try to stop Michael than they were to stop Golden Tate. So, and then when he misses almost 2 months, comes back in his first 3 games back from being injured for 2 months with a broke collarbone, he has 10 catches against Navy, 7 against Pitt, a number 12 Pitt, 8 against UConn, and he goes for over 100 yards in both games. And, you know, like it was a level of dominance. Now, Golden also went over 100 yards that game. But when you look at how good Michael Floyd was, and you look at the production he had in the first two games, and like even with the Michigan State game where he got hurt, if you look at the production that he had, give me 1 second, Trev, I'm going to add this up. Even with the 38-yard performance against Michigan State, if Michael Floyd plays 12 games that year, he has 1,432 yards. Even with, you count the game where he got hurt and at the first half, I believe, against Michigan State, 1,432 yards in that season. That was the pace he was on before he got hurt. And you look at the catches that he had in those games, he would have finished with 52 catches. Because Michael Floyd is averaging in the first 3 games of the year against Michigan, Michigan State, and Nevada, he was averaging, Trev, this is a stupid stat, he was averaging 27.5 yards per catch in those 2 games. And he was about 19 just against Michigan and Michigan State. And then you look at the touchdowns, he was on pace that season, Trevor, for 20 touchdowns. He had 5 touchdowns in 3 games. If you put that over a full season, that's 20 touchdowns. So as good as Golden Tate was, Michael Floyd was on pace for an even better season before he got hurt. And then he comes back after missing 2 months and goes 100 yards, 100 yards, 100 yards in the 3 games he had coming back. And then the last game together, Golden Tate was brilliant against Stanford. I mean, 10 catches, 201 yards, 3 touchdowns. Michael went 6 for 85 for 2 touchdowns. I mean, that was just pretty much like a send-off for Golden Tate. And then the next 2 years, he had to carry the offense the next 2 years with bad quarterback play. And, Tyler Eifert steps up kind of midway through the 2010 season. Then they were a great 1-2 punch in 2011, but he did that with not great quarterback play. If he would have played his 2 older seasons with Jimmy instead of those guys, he has historic numbers in college football. So I just look at the 2 and I just feel like, yes, Golden was better that 1 year, but if Michael Floyd doesn't get hurt, they're very similar. But Michael was so much better in his next 2 years than what Golden was in his next 2 years. And that's what really separated that. Whereas with Samardzija and Fuller, they both only had 2 great years. Floyd had 3 great years and 1 really good freshman season in which he had 48 catches for 719 yards and 7 touchdowns as a true freshman. So that's why Michael Floyd is number 1 for me on my list. And I know he was number 4 for you as well, and I know you'll get to that. But that's why I had to kind of put those 2 together. They were both brilliant. Arguably the 2 best receivers in the modern era. And in modern era for me, it's post Lou Holtz, because it's hard to compare Rocket Ismail and Tim Brown to these guys because they played in such different offenses. But in more of the modern offensive era, those are the 2 best receivers Notre Dame's had, in my opinion, which is saying something. But nobody had the 4-year career that Michael Floyd had at Notre Dame. Guys had 2 great years. Nobody had 4 great years like Michael Floyd did.
My number 5 guy is Joe Alt. To me, he's the best left tackle that I've seen at Notre Dame. And I know that there's some great ones that came through, so I don't say that lightly. But when I look at what Joe Alt did at Notre Dame, there's a reason why he went where he went in the NFL draft. And I think it's fair to bring up the teams that he played on. Definitely more than fair compared to some others. I imagine what those offensive lines would be without him. That would be the 23 offensive line has a significantly worse outlook without him there. Same thing with 22. We saw what the offensive line looked like in 2021 before he stepped in. Whenever I think of a left tackle that I would want to insert in the 24 offense, the 25 offense, heck, you could even argue the 26 offense, even though I'm high on Will Black, my answer is always going to be Joe Alt. I think he's the best left tackle that I've seen at Notre Dame. And that includes guys like Zach Martin, Ronnie Stanley, Liam Eichenberg. There's been some great left tackle play at Notre Dame.
What was it? Liam Eichenberg broke the streak of starting left tackles being drafted in the first round. That began with Zach Martin. Mm-hmm. And then Joe picked it back up.
Yeah. He was exceptional at Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. And when I think about dominance at a position, he's absolutely, and couldn't think of a better way to kick off my top 5. My number 4 is Michael Floyd for all of the reasons that Brian listed off. Every single one. And he was also a way better blocker, I would argue, than Golden Tate. If Golden Tate wasn't getting the ball, Golden Tate wasn't doing much. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Golden Tate was very much the like Hollywood superstar of that room. Rightfully so, because when you're making plays like he is, diving into bands, front flipping over defenders, making 9 guys miss in the same play. I mean, I remember that Stanford game. That was crazy. But even in that Stanford game, Michael Floyd had one of the craziest catches that I'd seen in a game.
That sideline one?
And for a touchdown?
Richard Sherman? Yeah.
Dude, that was an absolutely disgusting catch. But when I think back of Michael Floyd, no other player that I can remember had that much impact for that long on an offense.
4 years. Yeah.
I mean, it was for a good stint of time, it was, death taxes, and Michael Floyd was going to get the football thrown to him 10 times on Saturday.
His first career catch at Notre Dame went for a touchdown. Kind of let us know what was going to come the next 4 years.
Yeah.
I also want to remind people as a true freshman that Michael Floyd had 4 100-yard games. If he could stay healthy and had better quarterback plays last 2 years, his numbers would have been absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Yep. 100%. Injuries on the front part of his career definitely slowed him down to what was already just an insane career. I guess he would have just been more of the all-time leading receiver at Notre Dame than what he is right now. But Michael Floyd, for all the reasons that you listed off, are absolutely my number 4. My number 3 player on this list is Quentin Nelson. I said that Joe Alt was the best left tackle that I'd seen come through Notre Dame.
You were very specific. You were very specific.
Very intentional around specifically saying tackle, because I think Quentin Nelson is the best offensive lineman that I have seen come through Notre Dame. That guy was playing just on a completely different field than everybody else. You want to talk about levels of dominance. Everybody talks about that infamous Georgia play where I think it was Reed, the safety, came blitzing in, and then Quentin Nelson took it upon himself to remove him from the environment. I mean, it's
facts.
When you talk about levels of dominance, Quentin Nelson is what you want to see. The level of dominance that Zach Martin started to display in the NFL is what Quentin Nelson started to do at offense in college. I mean, when I talk about it, there's no other left tackle that I would rather add to any offense than Joe Alt. There's no other offensive lineman that I'd rather add than Quentin Nelson. He was an absolute dude. He was one of the few bright spots on the 2016 team that was just absolutely terrible. And then culmination was
2015 as well.
Oh, 15 is a redshirt freshman?
Redshirt freshman. And that was back when freshmen, you couldn't play a snap. He didn't play snap as a true freshman because you couldn't play at all or you'd lose your red shirt.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's absolutely insane what he was able to do at Notre Dame. Best offensive lineman I've seen come through the program in my lifetime, and just simply one of the best in program history. I'm confident in saying that, and I didn't watch like the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. He was a dude.
I did. I was alive from, I remember watching 88, and there's only one other lineman that's even in the conversation with him. In my opinion, it's Aaron Taylor. That's it. Now, Aaron Taylor was actually more prolific as far as like awards. He was a consensus and a unanimous All-American, unanimous in 93, consensus in 92. He won the Lombardi Award, but I will say Quentin Nelson not getting any awards at the end of the 2017 season is literally when I stopped watching award shows. It literally, when he got shut out, I said, I'm never watching these again. This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen.
Don't blame you.
The fact that Ed Oliver won those awards over Quentin Nelson, I was like, Quentin Nelson is the best guard he was to guard what Orlando Pace and Jonathan Ogden were to tackle in their careers. Like, he's not even the best. It's not even close, in my opinion, in all of college football. He was, this is a guy that got a 3rd-round draft pick, a defensive tackle, to just quit in a game. The No Moss game with Rasheed Green. Just got him to quit. He just started, when he'd come off the ball when he's matched up with Quentin, he would literally just turn his back to him and just let Quentin Nelson drive into the ground. He was not only the best lineman of my lifetime, he was one of the best players of my lifetime.
Dude.
And to your point, Trevor, he was brilliant in 2017. His 2017 was more dominant than Golden Tate's 09, for example, than Jimmy Clausen's 09, than Jeremiah Love's 25. I mean, it was brilliant, but he was also brilliant in 2015. He was outstanding in 2016. Like, he had 3 great years. Now, Zach had 4 great years, but Zach's 2 best years, as good as they were, just weren't as good as Quentin's 2 best years. I mean, that's how good Quentin Nelson was, in my opinion, and why he is number 3 on my list. My number 2 player, Trev, is Jeremiah Love. As I said, it's hard to put recent players on these lists appropriately, because there's two risks you run. One is, as I mentioned before with Joe Alt, the sort of the mystique is not built up fully yet, because it hasn't been, since 1990 that we've been thinking of Rocket Ismail and 87 of Tim Brown. It's still fresh. But then the danger is, because it's still fresh, you can sometimes overrate a player. But when you look at Jeremiah Love, it's actually kind of easy. You're talking about 2 brilliant seasons at Notre Dame. First time that you've ever had a guy win the Doak Walker Award. This past season, unanimous All-American in 2025. Highlight reel waiting to happen. Just absolutely brilliant player. Finishes his career with 2,882 yards, 36 touchdowns, and only played 3 seasons. Also caught 63 passes for 594 yards and 6 more touchdowns, Trev, which is absolutely just a level of brilliance that we haven't seen at running back in this era. And when people talk about Audric Estime, and you talk about Kyron Williams and Julius Jones Jr. and other players, like, they were great, but there's great, and then there's elite. And he was elite. It was a generational season for Jeremiah Love. Running behind a kind of okay offensive line. Let's be honest about that too. If you put Jeremiah Love behind the 2020 offensive line, he averages almost over at 7, if not 8 yards a carry. I'm dead serious. And if you put him on the 17 offensive line, he's a 2,000-yard rusher, and he's averaging 8 yards. I mean, I'm being dead serious when I say he's averaging 8 yards a carry.
With ease. Yes.
I mean, it's not even close. And the other thing about Jeremiah Love is, he was pretty good in big moments when he got the opportunity. But his impact on the game, his impact on the program, he was a 1,000-yard rusher on a team that played for the national championship. The only drawback to Jeremiah Love is that he was banged up in the playoffs 2 years ago. But even then, we still saw one of the greatest runs in Notre Dame history from him in that game. And then certainly one of the most, and that was the Penn State touchdown run. And then, of course, another memorable run for a banged up guy. He has that Penn State touchdown run. And, oh, by the way, the 98-yard touchdown run in the first round of the playoffs, which was the first touchdown of the 12-team playoff era and longest touchdown of the playoff era, period, going back to 2014. Still made his presence felt despite basically playing on one leg. Just an absolutely brilliant career. And very impactful off the field in a lot of ways that people didn't necessarily recognize quite as much because of how brilliant he was on the field. Great teammate. Just there's so much to love about Jeremiah Love. Wasn't he a captain this year as well for Notre Dame?
No.
Was he not a captain for them this year? Brilliant player. Great career. Great kid. The most dynamic running back you had. And again, I want to remind people, did it for 2 years running behind an okay offensive line that dealt with a lot of injuries. Whatever the reasons were for it not just being okay, it was still just okay. And I'll say something else. If not for Jeremiah Love being at Notre Dame the last 3 years, Jadarian Price is on this list. I'll say it right now. If it wasn't for Jeremiah Love being here, Jadarian Price would have had 2 straight 1,000-yard seasons and would be in this conversation. He'd be at the bottom of the top 10, but he'd be in the top 10, in my opinion. He's my number 2.
Jeremiah Love is also my number 2. I think it's fair to bring up that sometimes you need to let a player's legacy marinate a little bit before you can add them to a list. But there's very few players that while you're watching them currently, you know that they're going to be on this list. That's how it was for Jeremiah Love. That's how it was for me with Joe Alt. That's how it was for both of us watching Quentin Nelson. And obviously that's what it's going to be for Michael Floyd.
You just knew the minute Michael Floyd arrived on campus, this is different.
Yep, 100%.
Special. Yep.
It did not take long to recognize what Jeremiah Love was going to be at Notre Dame. And I'm not talking about his long touchdown run against Tennessee State. I'm talking about what he did against Ohio State in the biggest game at Notre Dame Stadium that season by a lot. The biggest game inside of Notre Dame Stadium probably in the Freeman era up to that point. I know Clemson was a big game in 2022, but Notre Dame had no shot of making the playoffs or anything. That had major implications, that game. Jeremiah Love balled out as a true freshman. We're talking about a player, and obviously you guys are going to get this for some of our sports bettors out there. We were to the point where it just wasn't even worth betting on Jeremiah Love on FanDuel. It was death taxes, and Jeremiah Love was going to score a touchdown this week. And that's what he was. There are very few players that come along that you know that you're watching greatness when it happens. And that's what Jeremiah Love was. He's absolutely the number 2 guy. And some of his greatness he did when he didn't even have the ball in his hands. When you're a player like Jeremiah Love, there are so many players that would look, it's like, you want me to run block for CJ Carr on a draw?
And
I'm Jeremiah Love.
His most exciting reactions, post-snap reactions, where he was the most excited after a play, was when he was blocking for Riley Leonard.
Yes.
What was it? What playoff game was it? Was it Penn State when he scored to make it 10-10. Or no, did Riley Leonard score?
Leonard scored.
It was Riley Leonard to make, and Jeremiah led block for him, and Jeremiah's in the end zone just going nuts because of the block he just had. Had a good one for CJ Carr this year too against Pitt.
Heck yeah, I did.
On a counter play. So then you look at this year, the one-handed catch against Texas A&M. I mean, he was a brilliant player. Trevor, I know we're supposed to be snaking and you're supposed to be introducing number 1, but you've got to let me introduce number 1. And then I'll let you break them down. But the number 1 player on this list, the number 1 all-time player at Notre Dame, again, this is for their Notre Dame careers, is Brady Quinn. And we'll get into reasons why, Trev. I'll let you kind of go through his career, but this was also a very easy one as well. But Trev, I'll let you start diving into why Brady Quinn was our number 1 pick.
Look, folks, we could sit here and talk about stats and being an all-time leading passer and what he did is at Notre Dame. That's what especially my generation compares it to. I can't speak for other generations because I'm not in those. But my generation, everything goes back to, can you be what Brady Quinn was?
Mm-hmm.
For Jimmy Clausen, it was, can you be what Brady Quinn was? For Everett Golson, Tommy Rees, Dane Chris, Malik Zaire, any quarterback that has come through Notre Dame, it's, can you be what Brady Quinn was? The reason why he's number 1 overall on this list for me is because of his impact on the program. The stats are just kind of the cherry on top. Mm-hmm. You want to talk about the revival of Notre Dame. We're talking about CJ Carr and the hype that he's getting this offseason. It's the most hype since what quarterback? Brady Quinn. It's not the most hype since Deshaun Kaiser. It's not the most hype since Ian Book. It's not the most hype since Ev. It's the most hype since Brady Quinn.
Yep.
He set the standard of what it means to be the quarterback at Notre Dame. Post the Tony Rice, Lou Holtz era.
Correct. The modern, not triple option. Right.
Yes. He embodied everything that it meant to be a leader. I think back to, I go back, I was there in person, but I go back and I watched the final drive of the Notre Dame UCLA game all the time. All the time. And Pat Hayden, the color commentator, the analyst on the call, talked about how he sat down with Darius Walker and was like, hey, how come in moments like this you guys are so calm? How come in moments like this you guys just kind of know what to do? Because it was after they had come back against Michigan State. They were in prime position to do it again against UCLA. And Darius Walker was like, I mean, because you look at Brady Quinn in the huddle, you look in his eyes and you know that it's just, we'll be cool. Mm-hmm. We'll be all good. He embodied everything that it meant to be a quarterback at Notre Dame. As a leader, as a captain, and he was a captain on the team before, like they were ironing like the C's on the chests, but he was a captain at Notre Dame, a leader at Notre Dame on and off the field. He is the clear-cut number 1 guy for this list.
There's the statistic mentioned, Trev. He's, leads every statistical category he leads Notre Dame in, and it's not close. 11,000 passing yards. No one else is even sniffing 10,000, much less, his numbers of 11,000. He just 95 touchdowns in his career. Brady had 95 passing touchdowns. Also had, I believe, 6 rushing touchdowns. So he had over 100 career touchdowns at Notre Dame, and played on 2 of the worst teams that Notre Dame's had before that. 75 career touchdowns. The next closest is 72. You look at the passing yards, 11,762. The next closest is 8,900. Ian Book. Single season passing mark 39-19. Only Jimmy ever came close, and that was with 37-22. he was so good. He's got 5 of the 10 best individual passing games of all time. He's 3rd, 5th, 8th, and then he's tied for 9th, in all time. But it's not just that, Trev. I mean, there's also the off-field awards, right? So Brady Quinn also was a very high accolades, not just the statistics, but he's a guy that won the Maxwell Award, which is the nation's best player in 2006. He won the Golden Arm Award in 06. He won the Sammy Ball Trophy in 05. And, was a Heisman finalist in both 05 and 06, I believe. He was a finalist in both years. But there's also the impact that Brady Quinn had off the field that can't go undiscussed either. I mean, a big part of the success that Notre Dame had was laid, at the feet of Brady Quinn stepping in and making Notre Dame cool again. And that was a big thing for me also is, I mean, how many Notre Dame fans have a child or a dog named Brady? I did. And that's, you know what I mean? Like, that's who it was. He made it fun to be a Notre Dame fan again. And you think of just the comebacks and playing well in big games. And everybody remembers the 2 bowl games. Brady played very well against Ohio State in 05. Threw for almost 300 yards in that game. The defense gave up 600 yards. That's Brady, and the offense was the only reason that game was close in the 4th quarter. And, LSU obviously was not a very good game, but I mean, he torched Penn State. He played great against USC in 05. You think of the 2 Michigan State comebacks, I mean, just he had so many big moments and the comebacks against UCLA, just he was so much fun to watch, but he also, like I said, off the field made it fun to be a Notre Dame fan again. I mean, that's a really big part of this. When you look at all the statistics, there's just so much that we like. And hey, guys, again, if you're going to argue with who we have on the list, argue with people that are actually eligible for the list. We've said multiple times, this is from 2000 to 2025, which is why we don't have Tim Brown, Jerome Bettis, Joe Montana, Rocket Ismail, or Alan Pinkin on the list. So I like a good debate. We want to know who's on your list, but at least if you're going to criticize our list, at least criticize it with guys who are actually eligible for the list. That's not too much to ask. I don't think it's debatable that Brady Quinn is number 1 on this list.
No.
When you think of the career records, the fact that he took a bad program that had been down for several years, made them good again, rewrote every Notre Dame statistic, and it's not even close. Two-time captain, I believe, 05 and 06, I believe he was a captain, correct? And just the off-the-field accolades, there's the only player that comes close to Brady Quinn as far as ranking from 2000 to 2025 doesn't play offense. We'll talk about him next week. But this is an easy number 1. Easy number 1. But I think you made a great point, Trev. The first 4, you really knew watching them that I'm watching greatness. I'm watching an all-time great player. You really are.
Yeah, man. I mean, when we were watching Jeremiah Love last year, one of the things that we would always have, and I get it, right? I get the constant excitement around Jeremiah Love and what he could have done, but I remember multiple times in 2025, is Jeremiah Love going to go in the first round? Is he going to do this? Will he win this? It's like, guys, we got to enjoy this because he's going to be gone.
Right.
And you are actively watching greatness at Notre Dame, the first Notre Dame running back ever to win the Doak Walker Award. I felt that way about Brady Quinn. I learned that from a very young age. Be where your feet are. Enjoy the moment. Whatever cliche you want to throw in there. The top 4 guys on this list, you could sit down and watch them and be like, yeah, they're going to be like for Brady Quinn. We could have made this list. Let's say we were doing this in 2007. And we could have made a list of the best Notre Dame players from 1996 to 2006. And Brady Quinn would have just been on the list. He would have. And so that's where I view him. Guys like that, Michael Floyd, Jeremiah Love,
Yeah. I don't think there's any debate with Brady Quinn. You can talk about Jeremiah Love, with all due respect, did not have the impact at Notre Dame that Brady Quinn did, with all due respect. Neither did Quentin Nelson. It's not even close, in my opinion. I think 1 is very obvious. I think 2 is very obvious. I think 3 is very obvious. I think 4 is very obvious. There's debate after that. There's debate after that.
100%.
So, yeah.
We did have some honorable mentions and then another fun conversation before we
There's some hard guys to leave off the list. For me, it was hard to leave Michael Mayer off the list. I mean, all-time leading pass catcher at Notre Dame at tight end, consensus All-American in 2022, 180 career catches, 299 yards, 18 touchdowns. That one was a hard one to leave off my list. That was the only tight end that I had a hard time leaving off of my list.
Same. Well, the only tight end I considered along with Eifert. Agreed.
Yeah. There was nobody else in that conversation. Yeah.
I already talked about Zach Martin. I had a very hard time leaving Jimmy Clausen off of this list.
Yep.
Because when I talk about impact, the unfortunate thing with Jimmy Clausen, we've talked about it a lot before in the show, is that he just played on really bad teams. Those teams would have been monumentally worse if Jimmy Clausen was not the starting quarterback on those teams.
That's a great take because people say, well, he didn't win. I'm like, well, could you imagine how bad those teams would have been if he wasn't on those teams? Like they'd have been 3-9 3 years in a row if Jimmy wasn't on that list.
100%. I don't think Golden Tate wins the Biletnikoff Award if Jimmy Clausen's not on the team in 2009.
He made a great catch on that play where Taylor Mays, but there wasn't a quarterback, including Brady Quinn. I don't know that there's a quarterback that's played at Notre Dame that could have even made that throw.
Mm-hmm.
He was brilliant. The reason that you can't go at Jimmy for me over Brady is because I think the wins matter.
Yeah.
I think that Brady brought a little bit of a different gamer element to the table. Jimmy's the best passer that Notre Dame's ever had, just pure passer that Notre Dame's ever had. Brady wasn't as natural of a thrower as Jimmy. He just was a playmaker. He just was a winner. He was just that guy. And I think that is a big part of it. But Jimmy would have come back for a senior year. He's absolutely on this list.
Oh,
there's no question about it. He's absolutely about on this list.
Yeah.
Let's go offensive line. Let's go running back. Trev. Let's talk some. Jimmy's the only quarterback I considered. Ian Book's got numbers, but Ian Book is a really nice player. But Ian Book was never the best player on his team, and he was just not an all-time great. Great numbers, winner and all that, but just not an all-time great player. Riley Leonard had a great individual season, but even his best season was not anywhere close to Jimmy or Brady's best season. As a team, it was better, but as a player, it was not better. There was no other quarterbacks that were on this list because all the other great ones were before then. Jarius Jackson's not eligible for this list. Tony Rice isn't eligible for this list. Rick Myers not eligible for the list. Joe Montana's not. All those quarterbacks aren't eligible for this list. This starts in 2000. Ian was the only other one that I would consider, even though I think I'll take Riley's best year over Ian's best year. But Ian did it for 3 years, and he had some big games, big numbers, but he doesn't belong on this list with these all-time greats at quarterback. Let's go running back, Trev. I only had one running back that I considered for this list, and that was Julius Jones Jr. Julius Jones. 3,018 career yards, 26 career touchdowns, owns Notre Dame's single game all-time rushing record. I believe he still owns that. I'm going to pull that up right now. I believe he set that against Pitt, I believe, in 2003. Let me go find it. Yeah, 2003, 262 yards. He also has the 9th best all-time game with 221. He got bumped down to number 9 because Jeremiah Love jumped him with his performance against USC. But, finished his career as Notre Dame's 6th all-time leading rusher. Also had some big-time kick returns. The problem for Julius Jones was he was sub-5 per carry. He only had the 1,000-yard season, and he didn't play on very good teams. If you and I were talking about this, if Julius Jones would have played at Notre Dame from 2015 to 2018, he's Notre Dame's all-time leading rusher. He'd have gone over 1,000 yards every year.
Yeah.
And be Notre Dame's all-time leading rusher. And he'd be on this list.
100%.
Any other running backs that you looked at, Trev, besides Julius? I know you had Julius as one of your honorable mentions, but who else did you consider? Did you think
there were a couple? I thought long and hard about Jadarian Price. I mean, there's been starting running backs at Notre Dame that haven't gone in the first round, and he did as a never starting a game at Notre Dame.
Which is crazy.
I mean, just off of that fact alone. I mean, I love Jeremiah Love. Obviously, he's my number 2 player on this list. But I don't have as high of feelings about Notre Dame's backfield as a whole and the running back room as a whole if it wasn't for Jadarian Price doing what he did the last 2 seasons. I thought long and hard about him, but it would be very difficult for me to put a non-starter on this list amongst guys who started for multiple years. And
if we were making an all 2000s team and we had an all-purpose player, he's on the list
without a doubt
because of the number 2 back, the kick returns and stuff like that. Yeah.
Like if it was like fantasy, he'd be like the flex, like he'd be your flex guy, like, you know?
Yeah.
I briefly thought about Josh Adams because I have very fond memories of Josh. But if I would have put him on this list, he would have been the one, in my opinion, the only player that you could argue in my top 10 you could have argued that his production was a byproduct of having the 2017 offense.
To a degree, yeah. Josh was a very good running back. I liked Josh Adams, but he benefited from playing behind 3 years he played behind what I would argue is 2 of the 3, if not the 2 best offensive lines of this period.
Yep.
15 and 17.
Agreed. And then there was a little bit left to be desired with him because he got hurt at the end of the 2017 season, didn't end it off well. Thought about him for a little bit. And then just from consistent production alone, I thought about Darius Walker for a brief minute too. Did not waste any time being a factor on offense in 2004 when he first got to campus. Back-to-back 1,000-yard rusher in 05 and 06, effective pass catcher, very good compliment to Brady Quinn in the backfield. But he just didn't have that. Like, I'm trying to think of the best way to explain how I feel about him.
He was more of a compliment to other great players than he was the leader, the driver of that team's success.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's
very underrated player. I also still have a tough time with Darius because this is an emotional reaction, not an analysis one, but I still have a problem with Darius going out of bounds against USC. I'm still mad about that in 05. But when you look at Darius Walker, though, Trev, I mean, this is a guy that where you talk about, being in the record book. He's a guy that had great production in his career, right? So I'm going to look at career numbers here real quick at Notre Dame. He's littered throughout the career records. He's 3rd all time in rushing attempts at Notre Dame behind Alan Pinkett and Autry Denson. He is 4th all time in rushing yards at Notre Dame, 3,249 behind Vegas Ferguson, Alan Pinkett, and Autry Denson. The most rushing yards of any back in this era. And then also when you look at the receiving production and you look at like receiving numbers, who are the all-time leading receivers at Notre Dame and pass catchers at Notre Dame, I don't think there's ever been a running back that was more productive in their career than what Darius Walker was. I'm actually looking that up right now. Running back receptions, he had the single season best mark of 56. If you look at running back receiving yards in a season, he was his 5th all time, the most of any back in this era. If you look at career numbers and just again, we're just talking receptions. He is number 2. Armando was past him, but he's number 2 with 809, and he's also number 3 in receiving yards all time at running back. Armando passed him there as well. So, but he's top 3 all time, top 4 all time in rushing yards, top 4 all time in receiving yards for running back. And there's nobody else in the list that has both of those. But to your point, that was all done as the compliment to Brady Quinn and Jeff Samardzija, Most Oval, and those kind of guys. That's why. And at no point in time did I ever watch Darius and say, that's elite. Like I did with Julius Jones Jr. or even Audric or Josh Adams and, guys like that. It definitely, and then the 2 backs that they just had. Kyron was not a guy that I strongly considered. Kyron Williams is a very good running back at Notre Dame. He was never a great running back at Notre Dame. He averaged 5.3 yards per carry in 2020, 4.9 in 2021. In fairness, the 2021 offensive line he played behind was not very good. But he played behind a very good offensive line in 2020 and averaged 5.3 yards per carry. He was a very good back. He was an elite generational back like some of these other guys. His best season wasn't even as good as Audric's best season. If you take Audric's 2 best years, in Kyron's 2 best years. They're not close statistically. Audric was significantly more productive than Kyron was in his 2 best years. Same thing with Josh Adams. So Kyron's a very good back, but again, he can't. He's just not on this list because these are just generational players. So there's a lot of really good running backs to consider: Darius, Kyron, Audric, Josh Adams, just Julius Jones Jr., Julius Jones. But the only back that really, Jadarian Price, the only back that really was that type of generational talent was Jeremiah Love. Yeah. There weren't any other receivers that I considered. Rama had 2 good years, but Rama had 1 really good year, but Rama, the injuries kind of slowed him down. Mo Stovall had 1 great year. Chase Claypool had 1 great year. There were other guys but they just weren't in the same level as the dominance that we saw from these guys. We're talking like top 10 individual receiver seasons. Chase Claypool's 19 season is on here, but for an entirety of his career, none of the receivers belong in this conversation beyond the guys that we have. Talked about tight end. Let's talk about O-line, Trev. Some pretty good offensive line we had to leave off this list.
The list is lengthy, man. I mean, I thought about Ronnie Stanley long and hard, but he was more flashy than what he was consistent at his.
He only had 1 great year, and that was 15.
Yeah, that was tough for me with Ronnie Stanley. Thought about Mike McGlinchey. I thought about, but I think that there is another level once you start getting into like the Joe Alt type of conversations, the Zach Martin conversations, things like that. Quentin Nelson. I know Jeff Bain was, and look, Brian, I'll let you talk more about Jeff Bain because I can't sit here and say that I watched him when I was 4. Like I don't remember Jeff Bain. I know the stories about him, the accolades.
He might have been the next. He was probably the 4th lineman for me on this list, behind Nelson, Martin, and Alt, ahead of Ronnie Stanley, ahead of Mike McGlinchey, ahead of all those other guys. You're talking about a guy that was an absolute monster on the inside, Trev. I mean, just a great center for Notre Dame, and was part of that 2012 or 2002 turnaround team. He was a 1st-round draft pick at center. Probably the most physical offensive lineman that Notre Dame has had outside of Quentin Nelson. The most physically dominant offensive lineman outside of it. He was a 1st-team All-American in 2002. I love Jeff Fain. He was probably the best lineman. And I would actually put Mike McGlinchey over Ronnie Stanley, but neither of them are my top 10. Ronnie Stanley was a great player in 2015, but even then he gave up like 4 sacks that year. And McGlinchey's 17 was better than Stanley's 15. And I would argue that Liam Eichenberg's 2020 was better than Ronnie Stanley's 15. Ronnie was a great player, but he was, even in 15, was still inconsistent. He was more of a better prospect than he was necessarily a proven, just steady player. He was way more talented than Mike McGlinchey, but he just wasn't as consistent as what the other linemen on this list were. McGlinchey was a very steady guy. He just wasn't as dominant to me as the other offensive linemen. Like him at his best wasn't as good as Ronnie at his best, but he was more consistent than Ronnie. Wasn't his career, but that's why those 2 guys couldn't make the list. They weren't on that same level as those other players. And, and again, Ronnie was a great player. Ronnie and Mike were both consensus All-Americans. There's just another level of greatness that they just weren't at consistency wise for Ronnie, and then just sheer dominance that McGlinchey. They were both great players. But when you're talking about a top 10 in the last 25 years in Notre Dame, there's a lot of excellent players that didn't make this list for me.
Yep.
Liam Eichenberg was a really good player, but they're just not in the same level as some of these other guys on the list. He just wasn't. Ryan Harris is a guy that I considered, but again, just not on the same level as some of those other guys that were on this list.
Final question of the day here, Brian. On the current roster, because I know we're talking about non-current players when we formulated our list, but let's say we could fast forward and look into our hypothetical crystal ball here. What players from this year's team do you think have an opportunity to make this list on offense?
I think CJ Carr, if he maxes out this year, could be on it. The problem for CJ when you look at him on this list is he won't have the career numbers that other guys do. He won't come close to Ian Book in career numbers. He'd have to throw for over 5,000 yards. He'd actually have to throw for, I think, 5,800 yards to tie Ian Book. for second all time, right? Like,
there's a
chance. I mean, I don't see it happening. The thing for him is going to be if his junior season is and that's after this year. Now, if he comes back in 2027, then I think there's a great chance that CJ Carr is on this list when it's all said and done. Statistically, team success, all of those type of things. He has a shot, but if he goes out there and leads Notre Dame to a title and wins the Heisman or is the runner-up, then he'll have a shot, because then he'll have 2 great years, just like Jeff Samardzija, just like Golden Tate, just like Jeremiah Love. You know what I mean? Like, he'll have a shot to be on there if he has that just brilliant season. If he comes back for 2 years, I think it's much easier to project him here in the top 10.
Yeah, and this is just he will be on my top 10 list if he wins the Heisman Trophy and wins a title, because that's something that nobody else on the list can say. Like, that is a major trump card.
Yeah, 2 things that nobody else can say. Yeah,
that he would be on there for me. But to your point, strictly from just production, if he comes back in 2027, I think he has a strong case to be on this list, minus, taking away winning the Heisman or winning a title. If he just comes back in 27, I agree.
Yeah. I don't see Aeneas Williams being able to put up the production in the next 2 years to be in this list, assuming he even is the number one. I don't see any tight ends that are returners. Like, I don't know that James Flanagan's going to have the kind of production that Tyler Eifert and Michael Mayer had. Outside of that, a tight end, it's like if Ian Premer lives up to his recruiting rankings, but I don't want to put any freshmen in this conversation. That's putting a lot on them. But anytime there's a 5-star guy, he's in there. I don't know that any of the receivers are going to be able to do what the group of guys we talked about have done. I think where you might see someone is offensive line. There's a chance that if Gerby Lambert stays long enough, he might be on this list. It's going to be tough, but he might be. Could Anthony Knapp be on here in a similar way that Zach Martin was over the next 2 years? It's possible, depending on what the team success is and the type of consistency he shows and, the postseason accolades that he might earn. I do think Anthony Knapp, if he stays 2 more years and plays to the level that you and I think he could play, I think you have a case to make a similar argument for him that's similar to what we made for Zach Martin. He's got to raise his level of dominance, but he just finished a sophomore year. And he's now moving to a position that I think his game can really jump. I don't know how much better he would have been at tackle the next 2 years beyond just more consistently technically sound. I don't know that he would have been any more dominant than he was last year. At guard, there's now another level for him to get to.
Agreed.
That's the only other. Those are the only ones. And I don't know that any of those guys are no-brainers, in my opinion. Like Gerby, I think if Gerby's got to stay 2 more years, both of them got to stay 2 more years to have a chance to be in this conversation.
100%.
That's where I'm at. But like, dude, I had Joe Alt like number 9, and so you got to be better than Joe Alt or Will Fuller to jump this list if you're an offensive lineman. I didn't have Ronnie Stanley on this list. I didn't have Mike McGlinchey on this list. 2 All-American top 10 NFL draft picks. Like, so for those guys to be on the list, they got to be like generational players. And that's why I think it's going to be tough for anybody on here other than CJ, just because of the position and then just the opportunities in front of them. But I do think those 2 linemen are the only ones that really have a chance. Outside of that, it's like, okay, is Grayson McHugh and Will Black, do they live up to expectations? Does Ian Premer? And that's asking too much of guys that have never played a meaningful down of football. We may be having a different conversation about them in a couple of years, but right now I'm not going to go there with them. I think we'll maybe have a different conversation about current players when we get to the defensive side of the ball.
I was already
next week
ahead.
Yeah, next week for sure. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. Hey, Trev, I'm gonna call a little bit of an audible here for today's show because we went kind of long on those. We're having a lot of fun. Let's do the Rice preview tomorrow, and then we'll just do mailbag today because there's a lot of great questions in there. I'd love to hear in the mailbag. I'd love to hear some of your guys' comments and questions about who you had on the list. If you're going to say we were wrong, there's somebody in the chat that said we're wrong about not having McGlinchey. That's great. Make your case beyond just where they got drafted in the NFL draft. Because if we're going to do there, then you shouldn't be arguing for Mike McGlinchey. You should be arguing for Ronnie Stanley because Ronnie Stanley got picked higher in the draft than Mike McGlinchey. So state your case. We'd love to hear it. Guys, this is not a like, well, these 10 were no-brainers. There was a lot of guys I had a hard time leaving off this list. Not having Michael Mayer on this list, I look back and I'm still like, God, how did I leave Michael Mayer off that list? You said that it was Zach Martin. Somebody's advocating for Mike McGlinchey. Somebody else could advocate for Ronnie Stanley, Julius Jones, Jeff Fain. There's a lot of great players on there that we didn't leave off. So if you want to make a case, I'd love to actually hear that in the chat, but just state your case for what they did at Notre Dame. More so than just, well, they were picked here or they, that doesn't really, it's not a convincing argument. But I'd love to hear it. If you guys have your own top 10s, we'd love to hear those too from 2000 to 2025. But who do you think of the current team on offense has a chance to maybe finish their career that way? It'd be fun to talk about that. But then, of course, any other mailbag questions you have, go ahead and get those in there, and we will dive into those as well. Just keep in mind, we will be doing a preview of the recruiting weekend tomorrow. So a lot of that stuff we'll dive into tomorrow.
Brian, like you said, to take us home here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, we have a daily mailbag to get us there. And if this does happen to be your first mailbag, you can put MB for mailbag or a mailbox emoji prior to your submission. Super chats get bumped up to the top. Covered a lot of fun topics in today's show. So very excited to see what questions we have rolling in.
Yeah, very much so. Let's start off here at the top with Jay Melvin.
I was talking with Brian Smith about potential breakout players. I mentioned was Miami wide receiver Josh Moore. He reminds me a lot of Malachi Fields, a big wide receiver with a high catch radius. Are you high on him?
I like him. I think he's a very good player. He's a good talent. I don't know that I would necessarily put him there yet. I mean, Malachi was a pretty early impact player at Virginia. Obviously got hurt as a freshman and then, really stepped up the next 3 years at Virginia. His last 2 years at Virginia and then last year at Notre Dame and was very productive. But I see the similarities: 6'4", long arms, good catch radius. I think Josh Moore's got a chance to be an impactful player for Miami this year. And especially next year when some of these guys are, maybe gone. Maybe Cooper goes pro and some of those other guys are gone. But obviously Malachi Toney will be back. But I don't know that he's a similar style of player to Malachi. I don't know that I would necessarily put him on that range right now, because one thing about Malachi was really strong. And I don't know that Josh is quite there yet, but I think Josh might have a little bit more juice than Malachi did as well. So like there's some differences, but I'm not quite sure I'm ready to put him on the list just yet of like a Malachi Fields type of guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's get down to some more questions here. Trev, we got one from Time Cone.
Does Leonard Moore shadow Toney like he did on Makai Lemon or traditional coverage?
We've been asked this before. I imagine we'll continue to get asked this throughout the offseason. That's a game that's on November 7th. There's a lot we'll need to see before then to have a sense of that. Again, a lot of it just depends on how other players are doing. There's two ways Notre Dame could do it this. One is that you could say, okay, we're going to let Leonard shut down whoever the boundary corners are. And then we'll have a double team game plan for Malachi, who moves around a lot more, I think he'll move around a lot more than what Makai Lemon moved around last year. That's one thing you could do. The other thing you just say, we're just going to put Leonard on him and have him run around. But then the problem is, okay, well, who's going to cover Cooper Barcotti? There's a lot of other, if let's say Josh Moore has a breakout year, we just got asked about him. You're going to leave somebody else on their 6'4", 215-pound boundary receiver that can stretch the field. Like there's a lot of ways to look at it. The other thing too is it's not just Makai Lemon versus Malachi Toney. I think the what Notre Dame decided was if we're going to lose if USC is going to beat us, they're going to have to beat us with Jacoby Lane, and they're going to have to beat us with Tanook Hines. They don't have anybody else that can beat us. I don't think you can. They're not going to run the ball on us, and their quarterback's a good player, but not a great player. If you take Makai Lemon out of the game, that offense struggles. I watched Miami score 24 points and beat Ohio State with Makai Lemon catching 5 passes for 16 yards. I watched them win a playoff game by 10 points doing that. I don't think you can just stop, Malachi Toney. Did I say Makai Lemon? I meant Malachi Toney. Did that in the playoffs. I don't think you can just shut down Malachi Toney and be like, all right, Miami's done. They got no shot. I mean, they got another 1,000-yard receiver in the ACC. They got better running. They got a better run game, in my opinion, than what USC had last year. And then they've got Jacobs and Vaughn at wide receiver, and then Elijah Lofton. So I don't think it's the same, and I also think Shannon Dawson as a play caller doesn't make the offense so Malachi Toney or bust the way that Lincoln Riley did with Makai Lemon last year. So I think there's a lot of reasons why I would completely understand Notre Dame saying, no, we're not going to shadow Malachi Toney. We're going to do things like we're going to bracket him. We're going to do some different things where we put more people on him and just let Leonard Moore take one guy out of the game.
My biggest ask, and I said this the last time we got this question, is they just have to be willing to make the adjustment if need be. Because the old saying, you don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul, that sort of deal.
Mm-hmm.
But they can't make the same mistake that they did against Texas A&M. Chris Ash and Mike Mickens took way, 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 way too long to make Leonard Moore shadow Mario Craver.
Mm-hmm.
Way too long. And they did it on the final drive of the game, and by that point, it was too late. Like their offense was already in a rhythm. If Malachi Toney is eating you alive in the first quarter and your nickels just can't cover him, you need to make the adjustment then. But I don't know if the game plan should be that. And some of it's going to be dependent on how good does Christian Gray look at nickel. How good
that's going to be my counter to the A&M and is you've got a different defensive backfield this year than you did last year.
Mm-hmm.
At safety, we didn't see Tay Johnson was not a guy you're going to use to game plan against a team like A&M in game 2. His first game, he played meaningful minutes.
Yep.
And you had Carson Hobbs and an injured Devontae Smith in the first 2 games. You had Christian Gray at the field cornerback where some games he looked good and some games he did not look good. And he was dealing with a shoulder injury earlier in the year. So there was a different dynamic around Leonard Moore against USC as well. Where in that factors into the thing I said, well, what if you just want to say, hey, we're going to, who's going to go cover Josh Moore if he has a breakout year? Well, now you got a 6'2", fifth-year senior, 3-year starter in the Big 12 that you can throw over there in the boundary if you want to have Leonard Moore shadow Malachi Toney. Or you may say, hey, look, we're going to leave Leonard over there and he's going to take Josh Moore because between Christian Gray and the nickel and DJ McKinney and Tay Johnson, we got 3 really good football players to the field that we can use to try and do some damage against the 2 guys that they have.
Right.
So there's the different options to your point, Trev. I do agree with you that if you can't cover Malachi Toney, then you have to make that choice. But who did Malachi Toney beat for that long touchdown last year? It's Carson Hobbs.
Yeah.
That's not to take anything away from Malachi Toney. And it was Carson Hobbs and Luke Talich is who he caught that ball in front of. That's different than beating Christian Gray and Tay Johnson. It's just, what I mean? Doesn't mean he can't do it. It just means he's going to have to work a little harder for it this year. And you've just got more options where you can even, if you do want to move Leonard, you also feel better about who you have covering other guys. That's the real. So you say, okay, we're going to put Christian Gray on Cooper Barcotti and DJ McKinney on Josh Moore. Okay. You could also say we're going to leave Leonard Moore in the boundary, lock down whoever's there, and then we're going to let these 3 really good players that are getting high NFL draft talk to take away the Toney Barcotti combination. So I mean, the chat said, how do you stop all those guys? Well, number one, Notre Dame's got the number 1 secondary coming back in the country, so they can match up that way. But look, guys, the best way to slow down and pass a group of receivers like that, get to the quarterback.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the biggest one. Shut down the run and get to the quarterback. Make them be 3rd and 11. Oh, Malachi Toney, 9-yard completion. Yeah, it's 4th and 2. You know what I mean? Because it was 3rd and 11. That's the biggest thing. Shut down the run game and get after the quarterback.
It's real hard to have an effective game as a pass catcher if the ball is not being thrown your way.
Yeah.
Like that's just
if you're going to sit back and let the quarterback have time, Miami will. I don't care who your secondary is. Miami will eat you up with this group of receivers and this quarterback. You can't sit back and if Notre Dame plays the same philosophy against Miami this year than they did last year, I promise you Miami will score more than 20-some points. Promise you that. They'll get in the 40s if you try to play them read and react the way you did last year. 100%. I don't care who you have on your defense. because it's just a way better group of players around Malachi Toney. And that's Malachi Toney's first college game. Yeah, they will eat you alive if you try to do that crap next year. You got to heat them up. You've got to. And you got to shut down the run. Absolutely have to do that. Absolute must.
From Salty, who is your top quarterback, Mensa or Carr? And are there any specific skills at which Mensa has the edge over Carr?
We've talked about this before. We both think CJ Carr is a better player than Darian Mensa. I think the one thing that Darian Mensa does better than CJ Carr, however, is he just does a better job off script. Now, he's not a runner. He's a good athlete, but he's not a runner. He does already what we want to see CJ Carr do a better job of, is when things break down, how do you manipulate the pocket, buy time, and get throws off? Darian Mensa's pretty good at that. That's one of the things I like about him as a quarterback. He's productive. He obviously was more productive, just raw numbers, than what CJ was last year. CJ had significantly better like yards per attempt and things like that. But, just raw numbers, he was very good last season. I think CJ's got the better arm, and he's, makes better decisions and things like that. And he can make some throws that I don't know that Darian Mensa can make, but there's not a ton. But Darian better is better off script than CJ Carr. And if you want to debate that he's better, I think that's where your argument is going to be like, hey, they're close enough as pocket passers that I'm going to give Darian Mensa the edge because he can do things when stuff breaks down more than CJ can. That's where someone needs to live if they're going to debate that Darian Mensa is a better quarterback than CJ Carr. That's your argument right there.
100%.
There's a couple questions here by Salty that I think are going to be fun, and this kind of goes back. So we're going to do several of his. This kind of goes back to the all opponent team. So what we did not do is where would Notre Dame players rank in there? So at quarterback, I would have CJ Carr as my number one quarterback and Darian Mensa second. He also asks about who will be the more productive running back, LJ Martin or Aeneas Williams, and at which skills does Martin excel over Williams as well. Let's get to his questions first. Let's quickly just do this, Trev. Let's, in kind of Salty's questions are leading to this. If we were doing an all-opponent team and included Notre Dame players, I'd have CJ Carr as my first-team quarterback. I would have this is going to kind of be nice. I'd consider Cooper Flanagan as my second-team tight end, but I still don't know that I'd put him there just because I need to see the pass game production. I would have the same running backs that I have now.
Yep.
Could Aeneas get there? Sure. But that's 2,000-yard backs that have proven that they can put up yards on very good teams. That's not even a conversation for me as far as running back. I don't put either the Notre Dame backs there.
No.
Wide receiver, I would have Jordan Faison first team with the two Miami receivers.
Yep.
I mean, he's produced more than any of those other receivers. He's going to be Notre Dame's number one leading receiver. I would have him there. I would not put any of the other receivers on there now. You could argue Greathouse. You could argue Micah Gilbert, Quincy Porter, Mylan Graham. But none of those guys have produced yet, where all the guys we've talked about have at least produced some. Even Jalen Cooper has produced. He had 18 catches. That's more than what I think that's like one fewer catch than what Micah Gilbert, Quincy Porter, and Mylan Graham had combined last season. So I wouldn't put any of the receivers, but I would have Jordan Faison as a first-team receiver with Toney and Barcotti.
Yep.
What say you on that, Trev?
Same page.
What about second team? Would any of the guys be on your second team or receiver? Tight end?
Tight end, it would be close. My hesitation with putting Cooper Flanagan in there is he's coming off of a major injury.
And he hasn't. Yeah, it's the same thing with Jelani Thurman. He just hasn't produced.
Yep.
That was my drawback. Offensive line, if Ashton Craig had not gotten hurt last year, he'd be my first team center. But I can't put him on there because of he hasn't played a full season yet. But he'd be on there. Anthony Knapp is without a doubt on my first team at guard, and Gerby Lambert is on my first team at tackle.
Yeah.
They would both be on my first team. Second team, I would have where I would have. The only one that I would ask you is, who would you have as your would you consider here's my question for you, Trev. You said Gerby be your first team tackle?
Mm-hmm.
So would whoever you bump to second team bump out Jackson Cantwell or bump out the other tackle?
Probably bump out because I got to go back and think of who my second team offensive tackle was.
It was you had your first team offensive tackles were McCoy and Gentry. So I imagine you'd bump McCoy back to second team. And then your second team tackles were Jackson Cantwell and Travion Mack from Syracuse, the kid from Syracuse.
Yeah, I'd bump out Travion Mack from Syracuse.
Okay. Now, would you at all consider Will Black over Jackson Cantwell at left tackle?
I would think long and hard about the Will Black, Jackson Cantwell at tackle because they've both played. Actually, Will Black has played more snaps in college than he has now. Yeah. Mind you, I don't think they were at left tackle.
None were at left tackle. No, it was so left guard and right tackle.
So they played the same amount of snaps at left tackle, but Will Black has college experience. I would think long and hard about that. I would think very long and hard about that.
It'd be a tough one. I think Jackson Cantwell is slightly more talented, but then you have Will Black has the year advantage. I also think Will Black has got a little bit more established players around him than what Jackson Cantwell have. It'd be a good debate. I don't think there's a wrong answer. If like Daly or Spencer wanted, or I haven't seen Albert McKinney this week, but if one of those guys wanted to argue Jackson Cantwell over Will Black, I'm not going to argue with him.
No, I would get it.
Okay. It's a fair conversation to have. All right, let's get down to so offensive line, we have those two, none of the others. Defensive line, I would honestly have Boubacar second team DN just because he has to prove that he can produce at a higher level. I think I'd consider I think he's more talented than the kid from North Carolina. That kid had way more production than Boubacar had last year. Pressures, tackles for loss, and I believe also had more sacks than Boubacar had last year. I would debate it, but I'd say preseason I have him second team, but I could see him postseason being number one.
Yeah, I'm confident in saying I would have had him on my second team DNs. First team, he'll have to have a big season to do that.
Yeah, I think he could be, and I think if he has the season that we think he's going to have, then I do think he'll end on the first team. I do believe that. Trev, let's go to defensive tackle. I would still have Ahmed Moten at defensive tackle. I would have to think long and hard about who my other defensive tackle is. Because the reality is Justin Scott's more talented than the Notre Dame guys, but Francis Brew was an all ACC player last year. Justin Scott was not. And so I would consider him or Tion Gray or Jason Onye. I would consider all of them over Justin Scott, just because Justin Scott still has to prove that he can consistently be a playmaker. He's on the first team because there's not a lot of good D tackles, and he's really talented. That's why he's on that list for me. Francis Brew was a far more consistently good player last year than what Justin Scott was. And I would have Justin Scott over Tion Gray because Tion and Justin are very similar. You know, like good parts of rotation, very talented, but have to kind of put it all together, where Francis Brew is a far more established player than them. So I would have him first team, which would then bump Justin Scott to my second team and would bump off Keanu Tanavasa.
Yep.
Now I would also consider having either Jason Onye or Tion Gray on my second team ahead of the kid from North Carolina. So Justin Scott would definitely be on my second team with whoever you think is going to be best. I would probably put Onye for now. My first team would be Moten and Francis Brew. My second team would be Justin Scott and Jason Onye.
Yeah.
There's no team on the schedule that's got the D tackles that Miami and Notre Dame have. No one.
No, not close. No, not at all.
Yep. That's a linebacker. I would have this is going to be a tough one. I would have Drake Bowen on my first team. I can't put Kingston on my first team because I don't know that Kingston's going to be healthy this year. I would have, for me, I'd have Drake Bowen on my first team with Matt Rose and Cade Olave. I would bump Brandon Booker down to my second team. And then I would drop Coleman Cawley off of my second team. After that, I don't know that I could put another Notre Dame linebacker for sure on the second team, just because they play so much in the production. But I like that would be the argument I'm going to. But that'd be the argument. It's like, well, are they going to produce? And will Kingston be healthy? If I knew Kingston was going to be healthy, I'd have two Notre Dame linebackers on my first team. But
Agreed.
I don't know where Kingston is health-wise. I would probably put Jaden Osbury on my second team right now. I'd take him over Matt Rose, who's on. I mean, actually, I might even put him on my first. Production-wise, I can't put him over Matt Rose, but he's a more talented player than Matt Rose. I'd probably put him over Mo Torre. I'd put him over Brandon Booker, on the second team. So I'd probably have Jaden Osbury. If Kingston was healthy, I have 2 Notre Dame players on the first team. But I still know how long when Kingston's going to be back. That's where I'm at. What say you, Trevor?
I'm going to sound like a broken record. I mean, again, same page. Like Drake Bowen would be a first teamer for me on my defense. He would bump off on my first team defense. He'd probably bump Jordan Hall back to the second team. And then on my second team, I would have Jordan Hall, and then I would replace Mark Anthony Parker with Jaden Osbury.
Yeah. Our guy Spencer, the Miami fan, said that Francis Brew versus Justin Scott is a pick'em. And in some ways, I don't disagree. If you're going to, who's the more talented player? It's Justin Scott. Who's the more productive, proven, consistent player? It's Francis Brew. So when you're projecting to 2026, I think that's where some of that debate comes from. Is who do you take the upside, or you take the more proven player? I think that's where the debate is between those two. I'm going with the more proven player in the same league as what Justin Scott was. But if Justin Scott puts it all together, he might be the best D tackle on the board. It's just he was an inconsistent player at high school, and he's been an inconsistent player at Miami. It's never been a debate about talent with him.
No.
Ever. And no, Daly, we didn't skip edge. We said we'd have Boubacar second team with a chance to be first team. That was it. Cornerback, that's a no-brainer. It's Leonard Moore. The question is, who would you have with Leonard Moore? For me, it's easy. It's Evan Johnson.
It's Evan Johnson, for sure.
Yeah. Second team, I don't know that I'd put any Notre Dame's corners in the second team because I don't know. I haven't seen DJ McKinney at Notre Dame, and he's coming off a not great year, and Christian Gray is playing a new position. So I'd have some question marks there. Y'all aren't going to like this, but at safety, I'd have both Notre Dame safeties on the first team.
Yeah.
I think Adon's better than the kid from BYU, and I think Tay's better than the kid from Miami, who's also an excellent player. But I'd take Tay over both. Tay and Adon over both of them. Yeah. If I had to keep one, I'd probably keep Fitzgerald. Or Fitzgerald on my first team and bump the BYU kid to second team. And I'd have Tay and Fitzgerald on my first team.
Agreed.
But I would take Adon and Tay on my first team.
Yeah, I would too. And I know the counter is going to be, well, Bryce Fitzgerald had 6 interceptions. Like, yeah, I understand that in 16 games. Tay Johnson had 4 interceptions in like 9 games. Like, yeah, I fully believe
he played 10, but one of those 10, he played 9 snaps against Miami.
I wholeheartedly believe that if Notre Dame played in the playoffs and made the run that we think they were capable of having, somewhere in the mix of 4 games, Tay Johnson would have had 2 interceptions. I'm confident in that.
Would have been 6 games because he would have played the last 2 games of the regular season too, also, and then played the 4 playoff games. I mean, yeah, you're absolutely correct, Trev. He would have had a statistically monster season. There's no question. So that's where I would be on that one. The all conference team would be littered with Notre Dame and Miami players,
without a doubt,
with the occasional BYU SMU kid mixed in as well.
Yeah, I mean, if they wanted to, Notre Dame and Miami could combine their rosters of just those 2 teams and beat a team of the other 11 combined players from the other schools.
It wouldn't be overly close.
No, I'm confident it's
Yeah, that'd be a fun game. Be a very fun game. So, yeah. And Spencer's always going to preseason rankings. Bryce Fitzgerald consistently ranks higher than both any safety. Okay, but here's the problem, Spencer. I've actually watched the film, and he's not a better player than the Notre Dame safeties. I'm sorry, he's just not. He may be, but it's going to require some projection. Just not. And I don't really care.
I've seen Drew Mestamaker ranked higher than CJ Carr. I'm not swapping him.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Exactly. So we did not do that during that part of the show. So I wanted to get that in.
Yeah.
And have some fun with it. So now we'll get back to Salty's question, which is this right here.
Who will be the more productive running back, LJ Martin or Aeneas Williams? And at which skills does Martin excel over Williams?
Well, I think that LJ Martin's going to be more productive than Aeneas Williams in the run game. I don't think it's going to be overly close. I mean, LJ Martin rushed for 1,300 yards last year. He was closer in production to Jeremiah Love mean, Jeremiah was 1372. LJ Martin was 1305. Now LJ played in one more game than Jeremiah did, but I think Aeneas's production this year is going to look closer to like Logan Diggs and Audric Estime from 2022 than it will Jeremiah Love from this past season, just because I think we're going to see, more of split carries in the run game. Now, where I think Aeneas could end up outproducing LJ is in the pass game, and LJ gets used in the pass game. He had 36 catches for 255 yards, no touchdowns last year. Aeneas, as the third down back in 2024, had 18 catches. So I think Aeneas will be the better pass catcher. LJ will be a significantly better runner. He's a very good back. If he wasn't at BYU and he was at Texas, he'd be getting way more preseason love than he is. But he's at BYU, so they don't talk about him as much.
Yeah, I mean, the gap between BYU's number 2 running back compared to LJ Martin versus the gap between Notre Dame's number 2 running back and Aeneas Williams is a far greater gap.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to split significantly more carries.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Love Aeneas. LJ is a very, very good player.
Another one from Salty. Assuming all are healthy, who will be the most productive wide receiver? Malachi Toney, Cooper Barcotti, Yamir Knight, Jordan Faison, Quincy Porter, Mylan Graham, or Jaden Greathouse?
Malachi Toney. I mean,
yeah,
he had over 100 catches last year. He's one of the best receivers in all of college football. Yeah. I don't think that's overly close. And I don't know that Notre Dame will have a receiver that's as productive as what Cooper will be as the number 2, just because I think the ball's going to get spread around a lot at both schools, but I think there's going to be more of a focus on the top 2 there. But I also think that Notre Dame's going to run the ball a little bit more effectively and efficiently as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on that trip. But I mean, Malachi Toney by a lot, and that's it. And I don't, if you're to say, hey, so-and-so is going to have a breakout year this year, I'm like, okay, cool, but he's still not going to have the production that Malachi Toney had, who had 100+ catches as a freshman.
Yeah, I love Notre Dame's receiving core, but I would just be happy if one of those guys did what Malachi Toney did as a true freshman, a 17-year-old true freshman, before we start talking about who's going to have the more productive season in 26.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Would you exchange Malachi Toney, Cooper Barcotti, and Yamir Knight for Faison, Porter, and Graham? You can't have the great one to be Notre Dame's wide receivers.
No, because I don't do that. I don't play that game of, if I could trade that, you can't. There's no trades. This is the group that wanted to be at Notre Dame, and that's the group that wanted to be at Miami. Would I rank that group better than the Notre Dame group? Sure. Would I trade them? No. And that's obviously the SMU kid. No, I still wouldn't trade him. No,
Agreed.
Just I don't look at it that way. It's a fair question, Salty. It's just I have trouble getting my mind to work like that.
Where would Walker Lyons be on Notre Dame's tight end depth chart?
Probably number 1, possibly.
Yeah, he'd be in the same conversation with the Flanagans.
Yeah,
like
1A, 1B.
It'd
be the best pass catcher coming back for sure.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Very interesting one. All right, let's go down here to Salty with another one.
Are there any offensive line positions at which you would rate Gentry or Williams offensive tackle, Nichols or Sharp offensive guard, or Mitchell center above the Irish O-line?
The only one that I would rank ahead of any the best Notre Dame guy at their position is Addison Nichols. He would be my top guard.
Yeah.
Now, I think Anthony Knapp can surpass him during the season, but he's a proven really good guard, in my opinion. So he'd be the only one that right now I would say is would be there for me.
Agreed.
Yeah.
If I also, like, if we were in a situation where Ashton Craig wasn't coming back healthy for this year, I would strongly debate Bruce Mitchell over Joe Otting as well.
Easily. Yeah. Yep. Now, the tackles are more proven than the Notre Dame guys. Like, if I was doing as we said, if I'm doing a first team all opponent offensive line, I'd have Gerby Lambert and Andrew Gentry. Actually, you know what? I'd probably, now that I think about it, I'd probably go PJ Williams and Gerby Lambert, not Andrew Gentry. I'd bump Andrew Gentry down to second team. Preseason. Postseason, I fully expect Will Black to be better than both of those guys by the end of the season. But like that's why I didn't have him on there. It's why I didn't have Jackson Cantwell on there. The two most physically, let me rephrase, the three most physically gifted offensive tackles between the 12 opponents and Notre Dame is Jackson Cantwell, Will Black, and Kirby Lambert. But right now, only one of those guys has played a meaningful down of football in their college careers, and that's Kirby. And I'll project, but I can't project that far on a team. Terv, it's fine that you did that with Logan Camp. I'm just saying, like, that's where I'm at on that one. I'd have to see him at least play a little bit of meaningful downs. Center, I would not put Ashton Craig at center, but as Trev said, if Ashton Craig was healthy, he played a full season last year. I think Ashton Craig's probably getting preseason All-America, second or third team preseason All-American talk.
Oh, yeah. And even I put Jackson Cantwell on my second team. His talent is tremendous, but not anywhere close to where I can put him on the first team yet without taking a snap of college football.
Yep. All right. Let's go to, here's one more.
How would Justin Scott have impacted the Irish D-line if he had committed to Notre Dame?
I don't know that he would have. I don't know that Justin Scott would have fit in great at Notre Dame. I think ultimately Justin made the right choice. I think he wants to focus on football a lot more, and other things a lot more. I don't know that he would have thrived at Notre Dame. And not every kid is meant to, and that's not a shot at him. Not every kid's meant to thrive at Notre Dame, just like not every kid's meant to thrive at Miami or wherever else. I think he made the right choice. I think they would have had a hard time justifying putting him on the field a whole lot because of his inconsistency with how Notre Dame plays. That's just my 2 cents. But he's extremely talented. There's no question about that. Which we already kind of addressed this one, Trev, from Salty. This is a little bit of a different question, so I want to answer this one. So I'm gonna get you first. Where would you rate Cade Ualave? Would you rate Cade Ualave higher than Drake Bowen, Kingston Viliamasa, or Jaden Osbury?
As a talent, no. Production-wise, sure. I mean, at Cal, he had like almost 100 tackles and he very productive. But we've talked about before the nature of the beast with Notre Dame's linebacking core. One of the reasons why, talent-wise, I think they're more than capable of being first-team All-Americans and winning the Butkus Award, but they won't have the production to do it because they rotate so much. So as talents, no, I would not rate Cade Ualave higher than Bowen, Osbury, or Kingston. But if we're talking about just raw production, yeah, because that'll be the nature of BYU's defense. Like he'll have another 80, 90, 100 tackle season. If Drake Bowen wants to have, and it could be different this year with Chris Ash's defense being so heavily focused around the run and linebackers and their role that they'll play on Notre Dame's defense. Drake Bowen could get to 80, 90 tackles this year, but it'll be like how Jack Kaiser did it in 2024 by playing in 16 games. I mean, Cade had 80, 90 tackles last year in like, I think 12 or 13, and I don't know if he played in the 13th. So that's where I'm at on that one.
Agree. It's rate All-America team, probably the kid with more production. Rate as far as who's the better talent, he's fourth on that list.
Yep.
All right, let's get to a couple more here. We got one from some ones we haven't got to yet. Let's get down here. We got Ray Hartman. Let's get to Ray.
Which tight end do you guys compare most to Premer? Knowing it's hard to compare, seeing as how we haven't seen Premer take a snap at Notre Dame. Thanks.
Look, if you want to say just skill set and how he's used, not predicting he's going to have the same career because it's unfair to put that on any kid that's never played at Notre Dame before. His style of play and his upside is he's that of Tyler Eifert. He's not like Michael Mayer as a player. They're very different players. James Flanagan can maybe be Michael Mayer stylistically. Ian Premer is 6'6", 240, 250 is when it's all said and done, fast, athletic. He's basically like a tight end. He's basically a wide receiver trapped in a tight end's body, which is exactly what Tyler Eifert was. So you want to talk about how does it compare? He compares Tyler Eifert. I'm not saying he's going to win the Mackey Award and do all the things Tyler Eifert did. Stylistically, body type, athleticism, skill set, all those things, that's where he compares to Tyler Eifert, which is why he was like a top 30 national player last year. Not by us. I mean, we obviously had him that high. It wasn't just by us, I should say. You know, everyone kind of saw him as being that type of player. last year. I mean, I think the lowest ranking they had was ESPN, who had him 38th.
Yeah.
He was 26th on 247 and 27 on On3. I mean, he's a elite talent. Elite talent.
Yeah, just skill set wise, I would have said either Tyler Eifert or Cole Kmet. He has a very similar frame to Cole Kmet, 6'6", 250. That's what Cole Kmet basically was. So it'll be interesting. From Jay Melvin, Brian, if Notre Dame beats USC in 2005 with Quinn and makes the national championship that year, do they have a chance, or does Vince Young smoke us?
We've talked about this before. I think Notre Dame scores on that Texas team, but I don't think they win. I think the game would have been very similar to the one that we saw. The problem is that the Notre Dame team on defense would have had the same problem against Texas that they had against USC and that they had against Ohio State, and that they just ultimately were not going to stop a great offense. They just weren't. And so Notre Dame would have kept it in the offense would have kept them in the game, just like they did against Ohio State, even more so like they did against USC, because Ohio State had a better defense than USC. They had a better defense than Texas as well. Texas was a talented defense, but they could be got a little bit. I mean, heck, Ohio State was a dropped touchdown pass in the end zone away from beating Texas that year. And if they didn't just lay an egg against Penn State, they're playing Texas for the championship, not USC. Or excuse me, they'd be playing USC for the championship and not Texas. Because, again, the dropped interception and then just laying an egg in a 3-point loss to Penn State on the road. It was a really good Penn State team. But I think ultimately they just wouldn't have been able to make the stops. It just like we saw with Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush, Dwayne Jarrett. If the game's close at the end and you put the ball in the hands of the Texas offense, the same thing's going to happen to Notre Dame that happened to USC. Yeah. I just don't think it would have come down to that. I think Notre Dame would have constantly been playing catch up with Texas. And it would have, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's the reaction. Because I do think Texas's defense was better than USC's defense. By a little bit, not by a ton. So I think it would have looked a lot like the USC game for Notre Dame and Texas. But I just don't think Notre Dame would have been able to keep up with. Wasn't Jamal Charles the running back on that team too?
I think so.
Do we remember what Antonio Pittman did to Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl?
I sure as heck do.
I'm just saying. And that was without, with all due respect to Troy Smith, he ain't Vince Young as a runner. You know what I mean? Like, that would have been a high-scoring game. I just don't think Notre Dame would have had enough firepower to it would have been a competitive game, but Texas would have been clearly the better team.
Yeah.
Whereas with USC and Notre Dame, USC and Texas, it was back and forth more than it was for Notre Dame, than it would have been for Notre Dame. Would have just constantly been scoring to make it a touchdown game. Texas goes up again. Notre Dame scores to make it a 6-point game. Texas scores, kicks field goal to make it 9. Notre Dame, touchdown to make it a 2-point game, and then Texas goes right down and scores a touchdown to make it 9 again, or something like that. That's how I think it would have been.
From Sine Cosine Tangent, I'm a young fan born in 2001. Why didn't Brady Quinn pan out in the NFL?
I don't think he was, like as I said, I don't think he was a natural thrower. Like, going back and evaluating Brady, he had a little bit of a shot put throwing motion. He wasn't super accurate the way that Jimmy was, the way that other top quarterbacks are in college. I don't care. Vince Young wasn't a very good NFL quarterback. Matt Leinart wasn't a very good NFL quarterback. Tim Tebow wasn't a very good. That doesn't matter to how good you were in college, but you go back and you take the fan hat off and you can see some of the things that, he had a slower release. He wasn't super accurate. He had a good arm, but not a great arm. Brady threw like really floaters on deep balls. Like, his deep ball, like, just stayed up there for a while. If you could put Jimmy's arm on Brady with the athleticism and size Brady had, that's a really good NFL quarterback. But I think that's the thing. And then the other part was he went to the Browns.
Yes.
That's the other thing that hurt him.
If he would have just went to a different organization, he would have had a better NFL career. He wouldn't have been a Super Bowl winner, I don't think. He wouldn't have been a Hall of Famer, but he would have been better than no quarterback from 2000 to, I guess, arguably still now has been successful with the Cleveland Browns.
Yep. Yeah. What Baker did okay there, and then they got rid of him, and he does even better. Deshaun Watson had a couple nice games, but yeah, Joe Flacco. It's been wild to watch that organization just ever since they got rid of Bernie. They did Bernie wrong, and they've been cursed ever since. I'm kidding. They're just a terribly run organization.
From Archer, our resident Ohio State fan in the chat, who's the best one-year wonder at Notre Dame? A guy who was at the program for a few years but only started for one. For examples, at Ohio State, I think of guys like Malik Hooker and Dwayne Haskins.
I mean, kind of Audric Estime. I mean, Audric didn't start all the time. And, I mean, Logan started a lot of games in 2022. And then Audric would get more yards. You could kind of maybe go with him. Miles Boykin is one that jumps out to me. Kevin Austin is one. That is another one that had an 800-yard season after never playing. Javon McKinley might be the most, as far as at least Miles and showed some flashes in the year before, in the bowl game the year before and all that. Javon McKinley never did anything, and then all of a sudden, boom, breakout season. Same with Kevin Austin. But they were all one-hit wonders.
Couple of other guys off the top of my head, and it's tough because he came back the year after he did it but EQ, Equinemius, he was kind of that one-hit wonder.
Dex at running back.
Yeah.
He had never had more than 300-some yards rushing. I think he had 38 carries in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And he had 1 year as a starter, rushes for almost 1,000 yards and played, 9 games? Tony Jones Jr. was one. I mean, Tony would have rushed for 1,000 yards if he didn't get hurt in 2019.
Yeah.
Trying some offensive linemen that were that way. 1 year starters that had great years and left. Not a lot that pop off my head, to be honest with you. Javonte Jean-Baptiste, he wasn't at the program, but he never did anything in Ohio State meaningful, and then comes to Notre Dame and has double-digit tackles for loss. It's pretty good season.
Yeah.
There. Yeah.
Nick McLeod.
Here's one at line, but yeah. I mean, he was a pretty decent corner at NC State. Here's one, Osmar Bilal. He was never a starter before that. He was terrible the year before that, but he had a really nice last year with Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Really nice last year with Notre Dame. Yeah, those are just popping off my head. Those are some that kind of come to mind. A lot of other guys were multi-year starters. Yeah. I'm sure there's others. I'd be curious who in the chat can think of any. I'd be curious if you guys can think of any, but those are ones that pop in my head. I mean, quarterback. One hit. I mean, who was a 1 year wonder at quarterback? I can't really think of anybody that hadn't played before. The reason I use Javonte Jean-Baptiste as a transfer because he never did anything at Ohio State. Where Jack Cohn led Wisconsin to the Big Ten title game. I mean, he was a one-hit wonder at Notre Dame, but he wasn't one in college football. Same with Riley Leonard. He only had the 1 year at Notre Dame, but he'd been a starting college quarterback and was a pretty darn good player 2 years before the title game. So you got one, Trav, that you can think of?
I mean, off the top of my head, the only one-hit wonder that I can think of at quarterback that would fit the criteria is Malik. But it's just those circumstances were just so crazy.
Games. Here's it. Somebody in the chat just made a good one. Kevin McDougal, 1993 at Notre Dame. It's the only year he ever really played a meaningful down, and he led him to the number 2 finish that year. That's a good one. Irish Martin had that one. Yeah, Kevin McDougal. That's a great. And he wasn't even supposed to start. If Ron Paulus doesn't get hurt in fall camp, Kevin McDougal doesn't even start that year.
Yeah,
that's a really good one. Very good one. Irish Martin, good call on that one. So yeah, that's the ultimate one-hit wonder at Notre Dame at quarterback. There's been others that I at different positions. I just right now can't really think of them.
From Jay Melvin, Brian, with the way Notre Dame is recruiting now, in the next few years, do you expect this list, talking about the top 10 offensive list, to change often?
Often, no. No, not often. Will it change? Sure. I mean, let's not forget some of the guys that we're looking at were highly ranked recruits. Quentin Nelson was a 5-star recruit. Jeremiah Love was a top 100 recruit. Golden Tate was a 5-star on ESPN. Michael Floyd was a 5-star recruit. But again, you're talking about some of the best to play the game in all of college football the last 25 years.
Yeah.
I mean, Brady Quinn's one of the better quarterbacks to play college football the last 25 years. Jeremiah Love, Quentin Nelson, Michael Floyd, they're not just really good for Notre Dame. The other part of it too is a lot of these guys were just without a doubt the best players on their team. You had Floyd and Tate, but then after that, who was Robbie Paris, Matt Shelton with Samarjan Stovall, you know what I mean? Like David Grimes with Floyd. There was no 3rd, 4th, and 5th option like you have now. So I think some of that draws a little bit. back on that. But at some positions, it's possible. I mean, maybe the offensive line, there's some really talented players. Could one of them pan out to be the next Joe Walter better? Yeah, it's certainly possible. I mean, would you be shocked if Will Black has a career better than Joe Alt? I won't be shocked. I mean, it's asking a lot, but the guy was a 5-star recruit. Same thing with Gerby Lambert. Same thing with Grayson McHugh. I mean, I won't be shocked, but I'm also not going to predict it because that's asking a lot of a guy to just be the absolute brilliant player that he was. So it's possible, but I don't know about often.
Sure.
I mean, we won't have Leonard Moore on our list next week, as just a little preview, because we're going with players who are done. No current players on the list. But if he was going to be on the list, he's clearly in the top 10, and so I mean, there's guys that can jump in recently. Jeremiah Love was just a recent guy on there. Two of the guys in the offensive side played for Marcus Freeman for at least 2 seasons. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it will change, but I don't know about often. That's a big ask, because that's some generational talent that we're talking about on offense.
Yeah, Jay Melvin, 2 things can be true at the same time. Notre Dame is recruiting at elite level, but every class they're not bringing in 2 to 3 generational guys where the list is just going to fluctuate every single time one of those guys is done. Mm-hmm. Is there a possibility for it to happen sometime in the next couple of years? Absolutely. I mean, Leonard Moore is going to be on my list the second we do this show again, and he's just not on the team. He will just be on my list. Xavier Watts, who just graduated, is probably going to be on my list of top 10 guys of all from 2000 to 2025. Yeah. So it's possible. But
I think he'll be the only Marcus Freeman defensive player that's done that will be on that list.
Yeah.
But if we did the list a year from now, there's 2 guys that played for Marcus Freeman that will be on the list.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad at all.
Pretty darn good.
But will it be often? And if you mean by often, every couple of years you add a guy, maybe.
Yeah.
But often is, that's asking a lot, bro. That's asking a lot. Salty said, I'm always a little bemused at the exclusion of Dave Casper discussions on Notre Dame's best tight ends ever. No respect for the ghost. Salty, that's because we're not old like you. I just had to say it. We always give the caveat every single time we do this that our all-time lists are all-time of our lifetime. We don't talk about guys we never saw play. And Dave Casper's last year at Notre Dame, by the way, was 5 years before I was born. I also like to point out that Dave Casper finished his career with 21 catches for 335 yards and 4 touchdowns. So that's why, Salty, we don't ever talk about him, because the caveat is it's guys that we've seen play, and not all of us are old enough to have seen Dave Casper play, including both of the hosts of this show have never seen Dave Casper play. I don't even think Dave Casper was still in his prime in the NFL when I was born. He was a pretty good player for the Raiders as well. So, or at least when I was old enough to remember watching it. So that would be why that is. But again, those numbers for Dave Casper is a different game back then. But he had 1 catch in 71, 1 catch in 72. Then he had 19 catches for 317 yards and was an All-American, by the way, that year, because the game has changed. But it's how do you compare a guy like that to modern times? I mean, Ben Koyak had better numbers than that in his best season. You know what I mean? That's why it's hard to compare eras that way. It's very hard.
Without a doubt. I wish I was 100 years old and could talk about Notre Dame football back in 2026. You know what I'm
saying? We love you, Salty.
Sure do, buddy. Sure do.
Oh, that was a good one. Well played, Trev.
Thank you.
Well played.
From Jay Melvin, Brian, I had one guy on X, a guy with some knowledge of football, not a Miami fan, say that he liked O.J. Frederick more than Leonard Moore. Is he out of his mind, or does he have some argument?
He's out of his mind. It's just, look, here's the biggest. I don't argue with people on Twitter. I just kind of own people on Twitter because they just have bad arguments. But the reality is I don't do it often. because there's just a lot of people on X that say a lot of dumb things, especially people who think they know football that don't know football. Now, could he end up being sometime down the road? Oh, whatever, I guess. But like, with all due respect, he wasn't. He at no point in time has he been as good as what Leonard Moore has been so far in his career. At no point in time has he been as good as Leonard Moore. So, but you can always find people. I mean, there's someone in the chat right now. The last thing that we'll respond to is somebody trying to pretend like Brady Quinn wasn't a good quarterback at Notre Dame. A Notre Dame fan saying that. So you get all types of bad takes. When it comes to who's better, things like that, that's just not something that I would spend a whole lot of time arguing.
No, I mean, fan of the team or not, that would be the same as, Nick Marsh and Jeremiah Smith on the same plane. It's like, no, they're not. You don't have to be
Nick
a fan
Marsh
of either team.
Is a really good player, but he's not. Yeah.
Like OJ Frederick, good football player. He's not Leonard Moore. And that's not a shot at OJ Frederick, because you know who else is not Leonard Moore? The other 272 starting cornerbacks in college football.
Yeah.
Like that's where it is.
Yeah. And if you want to look at OJ's freshman year at Miami compared to, what Leonard Moore has done at Notre Dame, you want to compare both of those again. It's just not even close. It's just not close. So he's a very good player, but I don't think it's all that close. So again, good player, but sometimes people just like being contrarian. They just like to say things because everybody assumes Leonard Moore's the best guy. So let me just say some hot take that is going to get people to argue with me or whatever, and then just call it a day.
I mean, that's the newest, I guess you could say, like crave in sports and just the world of sports is to have a hot take, no matter how blasphemous it is. Like we see it at the highest of the highs of, day-to-day talk shows on ESPN down to, fans of the team on Twitter that are just trying to get people to be like, oh, I didn't think of that. That's the newest crave, newest trend.
Yep.
That's all it is.
Yep.
From Joseph Barrett, what exactly was Brady Quinn's biggest accomplishment? An almost upset of USC in 2005. In my opinion, he was equivalent to a Steve Berline, a decent throwing arm, but not much else.
I don't know what your personal issue is with Brady Quinn, but honestly, to have that kind of take, it has to be something personal. I don't see how anyone could come away with an opinion that Brady Quinn was close to Steve Berline. Number one, Steve Berline never played on a good team in college. I mean, his 3 years at Notre Dame under Jerry Faust, they were 7-5, 7-5, and 5-6. And then his 1 year under Lou Holtz, he was 5-6. And I love Steve Berline. He's been on our show before. Steve Berline threw 27 touchdowns in his career, 44 interceptions. Like, what are we talking about here? Brady Quinn had more touchdown passes in his second best season than Steve Berline had his whole career. Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Led his team to a Fiesta Bowl and the Sugar Bowl in back-to-back years, and they had sucked for almost a decade before that. What did he do? I don't know. What's his greatest accomplishment? Destroying every Notre Dame record in that no one has even come close to. I mean, going on the road and beating a top 5 Michigan team, do we really need to go here?
Being the last Notre Dame quarterback taken in the first round of an NFL draft.
Yeah. I mean, he was the what biggest accomplishment? Maxwell Award winner, Heisman Trophy finalist. Was Steve Berline ever a Heisman Trophy finalist? I'm trying to remember because I watched Brady Quinn do it twice. So, I mean, I don't understand this. Oh, well, what about big wins? What about big wins? I mean, I just watched him rip up. I was watching it recently, rip up Penn State the other day.
Yeah.
And those are team awards. Brady Quinn led Notre Dame, scored rushed in a touchdown to give Notre Dame the lead with a minute and a half left, 2 minutes left against USC. Did Brady Quinn give up the touchdown on the following drive? Come on. I can't stand when people try to do this stuff. It's like, that's a terrible take. That guy not only owns every passing record in Notre Dame history, there's no one even close to that. And he spent 2 years wasting away under Ty Willingham's garbage offense.
Your takeaway can't be what was his biggest win, because then what is your opinion of CJ Carr? It's like an almost winning on the road against Miami, an almost win at home against Texas A&M. That can't be the only thing that you evaluate quarterbacks on. Can't.
But even then, Trev, I mean, look at his first 05. They went on the road, beat a ranked Pitt team, went on the road the next week and beat number 3 Michigan, went on the road and beat number 22 Purdue. I mean, like, what are we doing here?
What was his biggest accomplishment? Being the quarterback that we all compare all of the following quarterbacks after him to be.
Let's also not forget that as a sophomore, he was the starting quarterback in a game where they beat number 8 Michigan. He also was the starting quarterback in a game where we went on the road and beat number 9 Tennessee, who finished that year 13th in the country. Michigan finished that year 14th because they lost to Notre Dame. Like, people want to forget that he had those wins in 2004. Well, he didn't play well in those games. Okay, well, if you're not going to give him credit for games he didn't play well, then can we give him credit in losses when he did play really well? You can't have it both ways. You can't say, well, the team didn't win the game. I don't care what numbers he put up. Okay, then cool. Then you can't tell me you don't care about the numbers he put up when they beat number 8 Michigan or number 9 Tennessee on the road in November. You can't have it both ways. It's either they won the game no matter how he played, or they lost the game no matter how he played. Because if you want to take away the wins that he had in those 2 years, then you got to give him credit for how well he played against USC in 2005. And honestly, against Ohio State in 05. He didn't give up over 600 yards to Ohio State. That was the defense. So there's other people that have this take. I used to work for someone who used to have a take like this all the time, and it just drove me nuts. It's like, dude, that is such a bad take. Like, I don't know, like, maybe you're jealous. I don't know what the issue is. Maybe he looks too good. I really don't have a clue what it is. But Brady Quinn had plenty of big accomplishments at Notre Dame, statistically, and then also from wins. So I'll never understand that. Sadly, it's not the first time I've seen that. It's disappointing, but I've seen that before.
Yeah.
Almost upset of USC. Okay. I mean, that's a pretty big accomplishment, especially since he led that. But I just mentioned 3 other games where they beat a top 10 team with him as the starting quarterback. Those games don't count. I mean, did we not watch him rip up Penn State when they were in the top 20? I mean, you know, it's a frustrating argument to listen to. I mean, in Brady Quinn's 05 season, he led them to 41 points and 31 points in games they lost. Is that on him? You know, and they were a team that had a losing record the two previous years, I believe.
Yeah.
Went on the road, beat number 9 Tennessee. We're not going to count that because he didn't throw for enough yards for your liking. Beat number 3 Michigan on the road. Well, they didn't finish ranked. All right, cool. Michigan the year before was number 8. They finished in the top 13. They would have been top 10 had they beat Notre Dame. Tennessee would have been top 10 had they beat Notre Dame, but they didn't. Brady started both games, but he didn't throw for enough yards. All right, cool. Then let's retroactively give him credit for how he played against USC and Ohio State. Games they lost, but he played great. So,
this is just one of those where it's, look, dude, to each your own. If this is your opinion, I'm going to disagree with it, but there's no stat that we could throw out to change your mind.
If you feel that way about Brady Quinn after all this time, yes, you are not going to change your mind.
Yeah, like
You're
it's
just going to continue to hold on to that bad take.
I could throw out any number, any stat, any accomplishment. It just won't matter. So that's what this is, plain and simple. We appreciate you, brother, but this is a bad take. This ain't it, dude.
It's a bad take. And then we have a super chat to end it here. Just a thank you from Daily Comments. Just wanted to say I appreciate your guys' efforts. I appreciate that. I don't. It's not often I get to give somebody a hard time in the chat and then they give us a super chat. But yeah, had my guy Daly going there for a while with him thinking we were going to have Bryce Fitzgerald in our all opponent team. So
who?
The guy from USC, Bishop Fitzgerald. That guy. It's a really good player. Really good
Makes
player.
sense. That's got to be why USC is getting all the hype this offseason, because Bryce Fitzgerald comes back.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Well, folks,
we did have a question that just popped up last second from Spencer.
Whose back 7 are you taking this year, Notre Dame's or last year's Ohio State's?
That's a tough question. Because obviously Ohio State had great linebacker play. Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles, but Notre Dame I project them to have a significantly better secondary than what Ohio State had last year as a whole. Caleb Downs was tremendous, But I would say I'll see your Caleb Downs and raise you a Leonard Moore. Then it's okay. But what about what else there is? And it's hard to really do that completely because you are projecting a little bit of what we think DJ McKinney will be, what we think Pay will be in his second year as a starter, what we think Christian Gray will be as a nickel. I didn't love Ohio State's secondary last year outside of Caleb Downs. Ohio State has the two better linebackers. Notre Dame has better depth. All right. So where does it come from? I would say that based on what Ohio State's guys did last year at linebacker, right, you have to give what they did last year a big advantage over what Notre Dame's linebackers did last year. Like, it's not even close. They were significantly better, in my opinion, than what Notre Dame's guys were last year, in a lot of different areas. Impact, statistically, not as much as you'd think. But like, because like they combined for, I'm looking at 16.5 tackles for loss, the two linebackers. Their top three linebackers combined for 18 tackles for loss. Notre Dame's linebackers last year combined for, 7.5, 12.5, 17, and 21 tackles for loss. It's the impact plays, though, that the Ohio State kids made. I think the real big difference in Ohio State and Notre Dame last year was the defensive line. Ohio State's defensive line was way better than Notre Dame's. Notre Dame had a very good defensive line last year. Ohio State had an elite defensive line last year. And their secondary last year was better than Notre Dame's secondary last year. I don't know that it's going to be better than Notre Dame's secondary. I don't think it'll be better than Notre Dame's secondary. Their secondary last year will be better than Notre Dame's this year. I would say Ohio State has the three best players of the conversation. As their top three is better than Notre Dame's top three, but as a unit, the depth, I think it's close. I'd have to think about that one a little bit.
Yeah, here's the question for me. Is Chris Ash still the defensive coordinator if I take Ohio State's back seven? Like, is he going to ask Arvell?
I think just looking at it from a talent standpoint is my big thing, but that's a great point. What would Notre Dame's guys look like if they were turned loose the way that – but I think they kind of did that with Kingston last year. Don't you think, like, on passing situations, they kind of let Kingston do what Ohio State let Arvell Reese do?
Yeah.
If I could just get the first month out of the season out, it maybe have a little bit different conversation. It just,
Agreed.
yeah. I love when people say we're sleeping on a guy that we've literally talked about how many times we talked about how good Jalen McClain could be this year and how Terry Moore might be impactful this year. But again, they're not as good as the guys that Notre Dame has. They're just not.
We talk about so many guys, I don't even know if it's physically possible for us to sleep on anybody.
Yeah. That's a fair. Now, hey, remember I told you the story. You say that and you embarrass yourself like I embarrassed me and my buddy Matt embarrassed ourselves on a trip up to William Patterson. Mm-hmm. I told you that the other day, right, Trev?
About the name of basketball players.
Yeah, so me and my buddy Matt, I'll just share this before we get out of here. Me and my buddy Matt, I can't remember his last name, but we were quarterbacks together at Salisbury. And we were traveling up to William Patterson. It was the year I was redshirting. And we were just, being dumb. We knew a lot about sports. And we're like naming NBA players and where they went to school. And we're like, you know what? Between the two of us, I think we could name where every player in the NBA went to college. And we were feeling pretty good about ourselves. And so we said, hey, Starkey, or tight end, name any guy in the NBA. Between the two of us, we'll tell you where he went to college. And he thinks about it for a second. He goes, Bill Wennington. I looked at Matt. I was like, you got to be kidding me. We just wasted 2 hours of our lives acting like we knew what we were talking about. And the first guy that he mentions, we didn't know where Bill Wennington went to college. I know now, St. John's, but we didn't know at the time. So got to be careful. But yes, we've literally talked about Jalen McClain. We've literally talked about Terry Moore. We've talked about how we think Ohio State has a top 10 secondary. They're still going to be very good in the secondary. We've talked about this in several shows. So we can't sleep on a guy that we've talked about. I just think you're not listening to enough of our shows, Archer. You got to stop missing shows. I think that's what the problem is. You got to talk to your wife and about the 6 kids, and she's going to have to take on more of a load with 6 kids. You're going to talk to your boss about you got too much on your plate at work because you have missed shows. And so you've clearly missed that. We talked about Jalen McClain. So that's on you, Archer. That's not on us. But that'd be an interesting conversation, Trev. I had a baby, to be fair. The baby was born in the car. You know what? I just see a lot of excuses. Hey, as the great philosopher, what was that freaking guy's name in the movie? Jeremy. from Wedding Crasher said, rule number 76,
Yeah.
no excuses, play like a champion. I'm just saying, Archer. I'm just saying. I don't want to hear had a baby, sixth kid. And I don't want to hear all that, man. It's just a lot of excuses for all I know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying, man. Just, but no, I mean, in all seriousness, we have talked about Jalen McClain, talked about Terry Moore. I don't think their secondary will be as good. But again, we're projecting what we think Notre Dame's secondary is going to be compared to how good Ohio State's was. That's what makes it tough. It's a lot of projection with Notre Dame compared to what we know Ohio State did. So the known of Ohio State is better. I think the projection potential of Notre Dame is as good, if not better, because of the secondary. I don't think Notre Dame's going to have two linebackers as good as those two kids. But I would say I'll take Notre Dame's 3, 4, and 5 over Ohio State's 3, 4, and 5 last year as well. With all due respect, I'll take Kingston Viliama-Asa over Peyton Pierce.
Yeah.
Or if you want to say Kingston's one of the top two, then I'll take Jaden Alsbury over anybody else. I mean, if you think about it last year, Trev, Notre Dame's fourth best linebacker last year had 35 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks. That was their number 4 linebacker last year. That's Jalen Snead. So, yeah, we'll get there. And obviously, Archer, we're just giving you a hard time, man. I can't even imagine what it's like having 6 children and a job and a wife to take care of. So we're just giving you a hard time, but we appreciate you.
I'm not, Archer. Lock in, dude.
Trev says that now, but don't worry, Archer. He's going to have a kid in September, and he's going to have one, and you're going to be able to throw.
Believe me, I'm going to have a kid and still talk about Jalen McClain, Archer. So lock in, bro.
Trev's feeling it. I called him a pro early in the show. Now he's all up in his feelings. There's no slowing him down, guys. No slowing him down. So, chat, you guys were great today. Loved it. Miami fans, you guys are great in the conversation today. Notre Dame fans, you guys really brought it today. The one Ohio State fan, he didn't really bring it today. He didn't even remember us talking about Jalen McClain. So Miami caught another W against Ohio State today. Right, got him on the field last year, and then the Miami fans were a little bit more with it today than our resident Ohio State fan was today. So you're gonna have to step it up, Archer. You're gonna have to bring it next time, buddy. Sorry, man. Miami fans got you another one. So, hey, I'm gonna be on live here in about 15 minutes, Trev, with Sean Stiers. We're gonna talk a little bit about the recruiting weekend. Tomorrow, we will also have a longer preview of the recruiting weekend. We'll talk about the Notre Dame junior class. And those type of things, have some fun. And then we will do our Rice preview tomorrow. So you definitely don't want to miss that, folks. So, hey, before you get out of here, hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review. Of course, as always, the best way to be on top of all the things we're breaking down and talking about, follow us on our premium membership at boards.irishbreakdown.com. For Trevor, I'm Brian. Have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll see you here hopefully in about 15, 20 minutes. See all you guys there. But here on this one, on the big show, we'll see y'all tomorrow on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.